All right, we'll get started. I know people will trickle in, trickle out. Last night was a long night. This is the Thursday, June 21st notice for budget review, so it's not a full council meeting. There's no roll call. It's just an informal. I know the building department has a scheduling conflict, so Damien, come on in, please. We're just going to go out of order a little bit to... Sorry, there's a phone call. There was... So with that, what we're doing is, for everyone who is here, and thank you for all department heads for coming, the normal procedure was just to call in a few departments and then that was it, and then sometimes your area got cut. So questions were raised of, well, why don't you just call everyone in? You guys have something to say and we'll go over the budget quickly. We're just trying to see, is there any place that we can make cuts to try and help offset the deficit that we do have. Last night we learned quite a bit, not only from the auditor, the mayor, but police, fire, DPW, and some of the shortfalls that they have, which potentially have a problem with the budget. So looking to see if there's anywhere we can cut, any suggestions, get your feedback, so in that way, if there is a cut, at least we had everyone in to address it. So with that, turn over to Damien, and if you have anything to say or offer, and then we'll turn it over to questions. And I know counselors will come in and out. Last night we did have 9 present, and then as the night got a little later, people did go home. It was tiring. So, Damien?
Okay, so I did hand something out, threw it on the desks. This is specifically about the demolition program, because I know there's been questions about it, and it's in the first year completed at this point. And as a reminder, so we're working with 1 full-time employee in our department in conjunction with 1 individual in the DPW for the demolition specific work. So the sheets are a sort of abbreviated list of a few examples. So I got 3 properties here. There's a lot of information on them, but basically it's showing you the cost of actual projects. We have 3 properties on here: 569 South Bridge, Springdale Park, and Newton Street. And the actual cost that we incurred, and then the cost in the columns as you move to the right is what it would have cost us using the traditional bid system or block grant money. So the total savings of these properties is about $25,000, and these are not big. These are small projects. So with that, also the second sheet is just a quick rundown of a lot of the securing we're also doing with the individual that's in the department. And traditionally, again, we would use a third-party contractor if we had to board something or secure something. And the cost has been very standard. It's listed on the bottom, and our actual cost is on the left. So this is not every property that this individual's worked on, but I actually asked them to just throw that together today in addition to the other information. So as you see, it's about $2,500. So in addition to demolition, the program is also doing abatement of asbestos and hazardous waste. So something to keep in mind is that this is a direct benefit to the city, because these individuals are qualified, and if we had something in, say, the city hall or annex or any other city-owned property, they can abate that for us at any time. It's been pretty good for a first year, and I think now that we've gotten through that first year and the sort of bumps in the road of the scheduling and planning and whatnot, it's just going to get smoother, and this first year has proven that it's paid for itself. Moving forward, it'll be presumably saving more. So I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Any questions for this department on the budget? Joe?
Actually, don't have a question, but as much as a comment. If you look on page 23, the estimated revenue is $410,000. And if you look at just personal services, $408,000. This department pays for itself 2 times over sometimes in terms of the work that we need done through Mr. Cody and through the people that work under him. And the additional work for the demolition, I think, is just a plus for not having to go out to private contractors and spending very valuable dollars.
Anyone else? Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, David, thanks for coming down and showing this and showing all this. Is first year, as you said, there's bumps in the road, but it's working pretty well. We originally were supposed to be 2 people hired under this, right? 3?
3.
And
correct.
1 was hired and 1 was working with you at the DPW. Is that how it is right now?
Correct, because the last budget year, because we didn't hire the people for the program, the council cut the workers. But it just so happened in the DPW there is a qualified person as needed, and they've been generous enough to allow that person to work for us rather than doing their regular job at the DPW.
Okay, and is that the same going to play out this next fiscal year?
I have no control over DPW, but yes, I assume
Possibly.
it's going to keep going that way, right? And if not, we would have to sort of redesign what our person's doing as the supervisor.
Right, and with this, and I know you have a few buildings, and I'm sure there's several buildings. Do you have a current list of buildings that you will be working on during the coming year?
We do, and actually I didn't make a copy of that, but I do. So we have a house on Pleasant Street, 1 on North Bridge Street, 1 on Beach Street. These are all single family or single family with a business, and some 28 Cabot's a larger brick building that's down in the next to Capri Pizza.
Capri, right. Mm-hmm. Right. And once you do the work on these, are these basically buildings that you're sort of shoring up and closing up with the doors and the windows, or is this something just asbestos work that you're doing with the ones you just mentioned?
Oh, this individual is doing a lot of the securing as well.
Securing.
So, and the real benefit there is the timing, because we're not waiting on a private contractor. We could just say, hey, we need this taken care of, and it's right away. And the materials are there, everything. The first year was about getting the space ready at the DPW, stockpiling it with materials. So now we also invested a lot the first year in terms of tools and things,
right?
Which we won't have to again.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. It looks like it's working out good so far, and I appreciate the work that you and your team are doing with that.
Councilor Sullivan?
Damien, these the prevailing wage and Davis-Bacon comparisons, that's just kind of a line item for line item. If these went out for public bid, the company's doing it's also going to make a profit. So these numbers, would you say, are fairly conservative?
Jose, who was a supervisor, he grabbed the numbers from the Office of Community Development and the purchasing office, respectively. So he put these together with the wages in consideration. But you're right, they'd be conservative.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm just looking at the Springdale Park garage, and I watched them do that one, which is pretty good. And that was live loading of special waste. And they did a beautiful job on that, but I know if that had gone out for a public bid, that would have been about a $30,000 job. And
but it's a very good point.
The companies don't do it at cost. It looks like these are reflecting at cost prices.
They're probably on the lower side, but and to that point, there's been numerous times we've had to put something out 3 times to get a price that we could afford.
Right.
So we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally, on the 3rd bid, like the Bud at 30 John Street was an example of that. We finally got somebody to do it on a price we could afford, and then we gave them the contract. But, had we gone for the first one, it would have been much higher. The second one would have been much higher.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm familiar. I'm just trying to point out to the public that the $25,000 in savings is probably more like $50,000 if it had actually gone out to bid. Would you say that's a fair assumption here?
Yeah, they're definitely conservative. I mean,
okay.
absolutely,
Thanks.
yes.
Anything else? So Councilor McGivern, Lisi, Bartley, Bacon, Sullivan, and Tallman are here. Councilor Bartley, we have the building department in. Any questions for them on their budget or anything? Okay. So if there are no other questions, we've been asking every department, look at your budget. Is there anywhere that we can cut or do anything to try and help with the shortfall that we have?
In this, I would say honestly, in years past, I would have said yes. There's places, because between my office and the mayor's office and the process, we would have had things that could have been cut more. But this year, if you look, the numbers have been cut pretty significantly out of the mayor's office. The demolition money is one example. Historically, we've had 125,000 year after year after year. And historically we spend 400,000 because something comes up, we come and ask for the money, put it in the account. We're down to 50. And I should point out a few significant changes that have increased where they might not come off correctly, such as the telephone usage charges. That was historically for cell phones. It's actually for iPads, and iPads every inspector in the office has one for online permitting and things like that, and work in the field. So in the past, not every person in the office had a cell phone. It's just myself. The money in the line item is for that. So you're going to see a significant increase, but that's for the iPads. It's not that we're all getting new cell phones with a bigger plan. It's a different piece of technology. And the in-state travel is something that I know in the past has constantly been cut, but to give an explanation of that, that pays for the inspectors to drive their personal cars. It's by the federal rate, that's the ordinance. I don't really have control over it. We monitor monthly basis. I get a log, I look at it, see if there's anything that stands out. They keep track of their odometers, and they submit monthly to the city for reimbursement. But that is something that started at 7 as a guesstimate when we changed from the stipend, and now it's gone up. And there's also additional staff in the office, which is why it's gone up. And the rest is just our fluctuations based on vacation time and things like that, like inspections for plumbing, gas, electric. The individual that's the electrical inspector has more vacation time, so we have to have more money in there to cover for the alternate. So in short, the answer is I don't know of any that we could actually cut any further. And that in the past, the demolition money, having a higher number would have given our department some flexibility to transfer something in to say in-state travel, but it's down to 50,000. It's half of what it was in the years past, more than half. So if it's already at 50 and we had a bind, there's no way we can, within our own department, transfer that in.
All right. Anyone else? Councilor Bartley.
Hi, Damien. Thanks for your email, by the way. I forgot to respond to it, but thanks for your summary. I think I received that on Monday.
Okay.
And then, Damien, I think the mayor filed an order to supplement your salary through a line item that was local inspector. So do we hire another local inspector? So are those positions filled now?
We did a couple of years ago. So what you're looking at there is, under local inspector is one position, and there's an extra balance in there that allows us flexibility with the block grant funded position to have that person do work outside of block grant approved work, if that makes sense. So if somebody called for an inspection in West Holyoke or North Holyoke, block grant funding cannot be used for that, and that inspector could go do that inspection. It would come out of that line item. But if you look at this year's, I think we're returning about 15,000 of that back. And so it's just sort of a flexibility buffer for that block grant funded position.
I appreciate that, and appreciate all the, and believe me, if we had our way, we would give you a lot more of the block grant monies, but we don't get our way. We just make the recommendations, and we're hopeful that we can get you more, especially on the demo side. I think Mike's been kind of leading that, and we've been as supportive as we can be. But how much flexibility are we talking about here? Is it $15,000 or what is it?
we designed the position to have up to 25% of the salary paid from the city end if need be. At this point, because, you know, those are union positions, some of the increase to the salary would be taken out for the full-time person, and there's also a slight reduction. So I'm not sure, but I'm going to say, well, it's less than 15,000. It might be 12 or 13 that's in there. So I guess, you know, this would be one, if there was one thing you could cut some money out of, it would be that. I just wouldn't want to be put in a place where we can't provide some service using that individual because of the restriction. But it could be cut somewhat. That'd be fine.
I'm glad you said that. I want you to, you know, have the resources that you need, but we all know this budget's $2.4 million out of balance. So if we don't all pitch in a little bit, I mean, including the major departments, fire, police, and public works, I mean, there's got to be some flexibility, and then if we can utilize free cash as I think we're supposed to use it when it comes in, maybe we'll have a little more room. So I think, you know, I hate having us be the bad guys in this, as I always say, but at some point we've got to find some kind of consideration. And then Damien, just, you know, looking at your salary briefly. So what was proposed by you and then approved by the mayor was that same increase of $6,237 that we declined to approve 2 meetings ago. So I'm likely to make the motion, not for the whole thing, but I'm likely to make the motion on Tuesday for part of it. So I'm just one of those. If we can again cut in as much as we possibly can without having to hurt anybody. It's nothing to do with respect or anything like that. It's just a question of everybody's. I really feel has to pitch in to the extent they can, and it's still a raise. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, if there's no more questions, we'll move on in the agenda. Thank you very much. Next, I said we would take up the auditor because there was a communication problem here. He was here last night, and I guess I should have pointed out that we were looking at him too, but he's here again. He likes coming here. So we'll go to the auditor side of the page.
I would actually, Mr. President, like to do two things: speak about the auditor's budget, and also next in line is the tax collector's budget. The tax collector could not be here this evening, so she asked me to be here in her stead. So she's armed me with answers to questions you might have. My comments about the auditor's budget are very simple. It is unfortunately one of the budgets that is going up next year. I do want to explain why. It's because next year is the biannual actuarial exercise where we have to pay an actuary to calculate OPE, other post-employee benefits, OPEB. Typically that cost is about $16,000. Unfortunately, the federal government changed its rules in 2015, and they've put an increased burden on the calculations that need to be done in the actuarial year. They've also now required additional reporting to be done in the off year, which is going to cost us an additional $14,000. So in total, we have to spend $22,000 next year on OPED related studies. That will not recur the following year, but it'll recur the year after. So the professional auditing services part of the budget has gone up significantly. And there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay, questions, Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, thanks for showing that, pointing that out to us. On the bottom, it talks about that. It says 4,000 of new GASB 75 reporting. It's supposed to be 14,000?
No, the old GASB rule, which was GASB 45, cost us $18,000. The new GASB rule that came out in 17 is going to cost us $4,000. Thank you, federal government.
Okay, so the total is $22,000.
$22,000 that we will be paying to our actuary, yes.
And that's under 53010?
Yes, correct.
So that's why it's about 21,000 or so more.
Correct.
Okay. And that's, you said, every 2 years?
It's every other year.
Every other year. So this coming year, and then it won't be till fiscal 21?
21, okay. Right. We'll have that $4,000 charge in the intervening year that they want us to do every year, but the large study is done every other year.
Okay, thank you.
We literally go person by person and calculate benefits.
Councilor Sullivan?
Thanks, Bellamy. This is just a little follow-up on what we talked about a week or so ago. On the office and professional supplies, you've got down 3,500. Mm-hmm. And at that time, 1,100 had gone to extra clerical and only 650 in office supplies. Is there room to cut there a bit?
We've typically spent in the neighborhood of 3,000, 3,500 a year. You want to take 500 away, fine. But we go through an awful lot of paper. The auditor's office is a paper generating machine, as you might imagine, because every warrant has to be printed in duplicate and sent to the mayor to be signed, and you can imagine the number of reports and other things we produce. So that's most of what we spend money on, paper and toner, which is also which is unfortunately a very expensive item.
I get that. 1,100 went to extra clerical though, and we got 3,500 in the budget. It seems like
I don't see I don't see extra clerical. Sorry, what number are you looking at? We on the same page?
Yeah, well, the line item 54200.
Office and professional supplies.
Right.
You said extra clerical, that's why I'm confused.
Well, I think 1,100 got transferred to extra clerical out of the 3,500 in the budget.
Now? I mean, I don't see it on the page. Did that happen? I'm looking at the same page you are.
It's not in the budget before us. I think what Mike is saying is that it might have happened sometime this year.
Correct.
Right.
But that's nothing to do with next year. We've had a period of time where we had an acting auditor leave.
Oh, I remember now. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it hadn't happened as of December, which just reflects.
Right.
We put some money in extra clerical because we intended to hire a temp to fill in for an employee who was out sick, and in the end, so the only place to take it was from there. It was I don't believe it was ever spent.
I do believe we gave that leave to withdraw, because then you came in.
Because I came in, and well, I did it.
All right. So if I understand it correctly, then only 650 has been spent on paper and supplies so far this year.
It could well be true.
Well, we've got 35.
So we may have had a big carryover from last year. I don't know, of paper. Right now, I know we have none left, so we've got to order some quickly.
All right. So I mean, don't you think we could cut that to 1,500 or $2,000?
How about 2,500? I wouldn't go lower than that.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to do that. If that'll help you, gotta help you.
Every little bit's going to help.
Until free cash comes in, we'll get a transfer to put it back in.
I wouldn't do that.
No, but your successor will.
Yeah, okay, it's okay.
Councilor McGivern?
Joe.
Just, I mean, what we got you here, the salary. Is 75,000 the max?
That's the max. So I put in the max for the auditor to give you as much flexibility as possible, at least initially, in hiring the new auditor.
In your professional opinion, are we going to find an auditor out there for $75,000? I think you just answered it.
It's going to be tough. I personally believe the position should command $20,000 to $30,000 more than that in the marketplace. Interestingly, one of our accounting consultants worked with the assistant to the governor on looking at two positions in Massachusetts: city auditors and city managers. And what they found in what they found in that study was that both of these positions are currently, I'll use the word occupied, by a lot of people who are sort of towards the end of their career and are retiring out. And unfortunately, there's not a new generation of people coming along to fill those positions. So the positions, so candidates for these positions are very scarce, and the prices are getting bid up, especially in Western Massachusetts. So yeah, we have problems. Now, on the good news front, our new personnel director has been working on finding candidates, and we have found 3 candidates who look very attractive and have not thrown up at the salary put in the ad. So we have some encouragement. In fact, we interviewed one today who we both like a lot. So we're trying to get some good candidates for you. So again,
well, that's good news, but may I ask a question? Why would you be interviewing them?
To test their technical skills, since I didn't do it last time, and look what happened. So we're teaming up. This is teamwork between 2 departments.
If someone applies, don't take this wrong. We appreciate any upfront look, but if somebody applies, that person needs to be put in front of the city council regardless of your interview or the personnel department's interview. That's our purview. We want to help, but I don't want to hear somebody got disqualified without being put in front of us.
Well, you'll certainly get all the resumes. We'll just tell you, here's the ones that we
that's all we want.
Recommend, and why.
That's fair.
Done, Joe, or?
For now.
Okay. Councilor Bartley?
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't going to ask you about that, but I'm glad you vetted. So this counselor is very happy because the last bill, let me just, all right. Some prior applicants had not been, to me, they had not been vetted at all.
Right.
And it was a colossal waste of time.
Yeah, that's
colossal.
What I felt.
So the ultimate hiring authority, we all know, is this body, but there's nothing that prevents you from vetting anybody, and certainly you can send it forward to us, and if they want to apply, they want an interview, then we'll schedule the interview.
We have a dozen resumes. You can have them all. We'll say these 3 we really like. We've interviewed them. Here's why. If you see somebody else you want to interview, bring them in.
I think,
but we're trying to make the process more efficient and effective for you.
Yeah, Bellamy, I'm just speaking for me. I'm very grateful. Just on assistant city. Who is our assistant city auditor? Would you just remind me, please?
Susan Padilla.
Okay, and she is. It looks like she put in for a salary increase.
I have put her in for a salary increase
Okay,
in anticipation that the city council will pass the salary study, which would allow that salary increase to take place.
So let me just ask you: is this salary increase? At PR 22, is that permissible right now? That 52,000?
No, not until you pass the salary study. Susan is one of the 49 employees who haven't had a raise in 12 years. She's one of the employees who've been sort of neglected by the city council. If you look at statistics, in those 12 years, her colleagues who are clerks have gotten raises in the amount of $4,000 over that time. If you look at the Consumer Price Index, you'll see that the Consumer Price Index has gone up 18%, or $8,000 over that time, $8,000 on her salary. So she's lost $8,000 worth of purchasing power. So that's just one example of, 40 people in the city to whom this salary survey means so much. And that's why I've put something in here so that if you pass the salary survey, at least you don't have to add to the budget for the auditor's office, because I put some money in. I haven't put in all that she deserves, I've tried to put in a reasonable amount so that everybody of the 40 people can get something.
Okay, well, I'm just going to, and obviously I respect your opinion. I'm going to push back and say, you know, I'm a little tired of people blaming the city council for things that are on the executive for 12 years. I for one, am exhausted by that for 12 years because, you know, there are other mayors that could have done something, X, Y, Z, but to put it on this, by the way, it came up to a vote, it got back to ordinance, so I'm
happy to put it on the whole city government because I believe
right, yeah, so
whole city government is complicit.
I know you are, Bellamy. I know sometimes people, I mean, like we had the other night, we had people come to the mic and point fingers at you, city council, and as I said before my vote, I said it's emotional, and I understand that, but I just want to push back again and say I don't think that we should be targeted as the bad guys. There's plenty of blame to go around.
What I'd rather say is you have the opportunity to be the good guys and right the wrongs that have existed for the last 12 years, to get rid of this wage slavery, and that is a correct term for what is happening to these 40 people. They are slaves. And it's time to end wage slavery in the city of Holyoke. Please do it, City Council. I implore you to do that.
All right,
well,
let's move on
yeah, I don't
to
want to get too deep there. But I just asked to this 52,000. Can we vote for this if it's just beyond the salary studies? I mean, the salary study is not
you
approved,
can vote to include it in the budget. I can't pay her that until the salary study is but it can be in the budget. It just won't be spent until something else happens. It means the account is overfunded at the moment. But I can't change the salary unless there's an ordinance that says here's the right range.
Okay, so you put something beyond the ordinance and the mayor okayed it. I think that's what you just said.
Correct.
All right. So that's does that happen in other? Has it happened in other? Have you reviewed this whole budget with the mayor? Has that happened with other employees? Where you've or the departments have approved a certain amount beyond the allowed amount in the ordinance that you reviewed it and the mayor's approved that? Has that happened elsewhere in other departments?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Oh, okay. You don't. Okay. Well, that's somewhat encouraging.
In some cases, that's, you know, we have that line in the budget for salary study adjustments. So some people have put it in that line.
Okay. So
clear.
Okay, so Mr. President, what would you have us do at this point? Because I don't want to put any more burden on Bellamy's lap, but you heard what he said. He doesn't think so, that some of these proposed salaries are beyond the allowed amount in the ordinance.
Well, our job is to go through each line and see if it's there. We can always request that he go back and look and make that correction. You can do both.
Okay, all right, so without overburdening Bellamy, who's already overburdened, what can we get something from, you know, personnel department to say these are the amounts pursuant to the ordinance as to the salaries, and then are we supposed to, you know, figure out the calculations if it's more than one employee? I mean, it sounds like, you know.
I know what you're saying, but the numbers were put in by Bellamy and the mayor. You could ask personnel to help out.
They're not legal, Todd.
What? I understand what you're saying.
And so I'm saying, how many other ones are not legal? Now, Bellamy just said he doesn't think any other ones, but I mean, I think we should know, at least be fully informed. I mean,
and that's the request to Bellamy to do that. It is.
Okay, well then, you know, I can make the request, but I think it ought to come from the president to make the request. So
we can make the request.
Okay, well, all right. Well, then that's without overburdening. If we can just verify, and if there are other exceptions, such as this one, and I certainly want to pay Sue what she's worth, and she's worth a lot more than that. But Bellamy, what would you have us do? I mean. What would you have us do for money? I mean, I mean, you don't have an answer. That's a rhetorical. That's the point. So, but I appreciate your coming in. Thanks.
Councilor McGivern.
I just want to clarify my comments from before about the any candidates for the position of auditor. Bellamy is a fine acting auditor, you know, and he would have made a great auditor if it wasn't that it's not his time in his career or time in his life to do it. And, you know, we've been lucky to have him while we who are responsible for filling this position. The acting auditor, as you know, is appointed by the mayor. The personnel director is appointed by the mayor. Yes, confirmed by us, but they are mayoral appointments. We advertise for auditor. Prior to this, we always, our only auditor for the last two auditors for the last 60 years were civil service test appointees, meaning they took a very technical test put out by civil service in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we had to choose from that list. There was no job description other than what the position calls for. There was no hoops that they had to jump through. Therefore, we're doing something which is new territory to us, and we've already had a little bit of a hiccup. And yes, it's important to have Bellamy and the Human Service Personnel Director to check resumes and to vet resumes. I'm going to rephrase what I was trying to say is that doesn't mean any candidate, good or bad, should not at least be put in front of us in some form. If it's this person does not meet the criteria, that's fine. But that decision cannot be made without us having a chance to overrule that. And that's the way we've done in other appointments. And that's I think, the most common sense way to do it. I'm not suggesting there's a conspiracy out of room one, but I'm not going to let room one have any say other than the fact that the auditor needs to work close with the mayor, have any say on our appointment, because the autonomy of this position is very important to the checks and balance of the city. And that's why I said we need to know every candidate that comes forward, regardless of whether they meet the criteria or potential or not. And Bellamy, your editorial on the salaries is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Quite frankly, I'm in favor. We need to pass the salary ordinance. I disagree, though, if the salary ordinance doesn't pass, you cannot budget for more than what the current salary ordinance calls for.
Correct. Anything else for the auditor side? Since you're here, you mentioned
Tax collector.
tax collector. That's page 7.
And the tax collector has suggested to me that she is willing to cut her other contracted services from $5,000 to $2,000. So she's volunteering a reduction to you in anticipation of your asking that of her.
Is that 53190?
53100.
Yep. 53100, other contracted services.
Yeah. And what that account has been used for is for the deputy collector, the current deputy collector, to collect some outstanding bills from that were first gone after by the previous deputy collector, and those bills there are fewer and fewer of them, so she thinks she needs less money. She thinks she's got most of them collected. Let's just leave it that way.
Councilor Bartley?
Bellamy, just the tax collector's salary herself,
Yes,
the 67,000 proposed by the,
that was proposed by the mayor.
I read that. Where does that fit with the DH? Is that?
As far as I know, that fits into the range.
Does it? All right, and the requested amount was 61,270.
That's her current salary.
And that was
She put in.
That was requested by a tax collector.
Yeah, that's her current salary that she put into her budget.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, she didn't request a raise, but the mayor's requesting a whatever that is,
Yes,
5,000.
that's the mayor's
Yeah,
decision.
okay.
Councilor
you.
Aiken.
Melanie,
No. All right, go Mike. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. The 53010, the tax title certification.
Yes.
Is that an end of the year thing? I mean.
Yeah, yes. Typically, tax title certification takes place in the month of March, but because of the chaos around the tax rate this March, it's not taking place until now. So it involves two things. One is advertising, so you can see that none of the advertising budget was spent as of December. It's all being spent right now. Literally, the ads are in the paper now, and then as soon as the ads have run, and she has to go and have the tax titles actually certified. So those two things are taking place in the month of June as opposed to in the month of March.
Okay, so the previous year it was only 6,800. We had 10,000 budgeted. Do we have any sense where this year is going to come? So
No. She thinks she'll need it all. That's all I can tell you.
and is that the same case? So, well, if advertising's up there in, if that's a big piece of the tax title certification, there's also another 10,000 in the advertising budget.
Right, because the Republican is a very expensive vehicle to advertise in.
But this expense is in two different line items. It's in the 53010 and the.
Yeah, first you advertise for to the tax titles. You have to put notices in the paper, and then once the notices of there's some time period, then you have to register them with the courts, and that's the tax title certification. You certify them with the courts, and you pay the courts a fee for that. That's part two of the process. It's a two-step process.
All right.
So it hits two budget lines.
And that's why nothing had been spent up till now in it?
Right, right. Because it was supposed to be done, as I said, it was supposed to take place in March, but it got delayed because of other events.
Okay.
All set?
Councilor Reagan?
He asked my question, so I'm all set.
Councilor Barley?
Yeah, I mean, Bellamy, I do see what you just argued about the 10,000, but here we have it at 57,400. We have the collector putting a request in for 10,000, and the mayor cutting it to 1,000.
That was a typo. That's the insurance line.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 10,000 was a typo, and it got corrected to 1,000. That's for her bond.
That was a typo.
She and
Okay.
I think one other employee have to be bonded, and that's what that's for.
Oh.
The $1,000.
Oh, okay. So that's a typo. All right.
Anyone else for the tax collector's office? All right.
So,
Thank you. With that, we'll go right back to the top. Board of Health. How are you, sir? Thank you for coming in. As I stated earlier, if you just want to give a brief discussion about the office, anything to inform us, if there's a mistake in the budget, just anything. If not, we'll just open up to questions on your page and see where we go from there.
Revenues for the Board of Health are showing $10,000.
Is your mic on, Brian?
The mic, just make sure.
Revenues are showing $10,000 for the Board of Health. It's a mistake. It was a mistake last year, and I don't know where. It showed up in the building department last year.
What is it?
So what is it?
I don't know what it is.
What is the mistake?
I just realized it was, I tried to get it corrected last year. I just saw it again, it wasn't here.
But what's the mistake? Is there something missing, or is there too much money?
No, there's $10,000 in revenues that we took in this year. According to this, we took in over $100,000 in the receivership or the vacant building fund. we bring in about $70,000-$80,000 in food alone.
Bellamy's still here? Bellamy's the one that's been putting these numbers in.
That was, it's at the very end.
Brian.
Revenues.
Brian.
38.
Listen.
These are revenues to the general fund only, so no revolving fund revenues are shown on this page. The vacant building fund is a revolving fund that is totally independent of the general fund.
What
This is why I don't like revolving funds.
What about the food? The food permits that we, the $80,000 that we
Should be
pull
on
in
the
for
mic.
food permits?
Licenses?
Permits.
That may be on, look on the planning board page. I think all the minimum licenses and permits go to the planning board. I think
Should be on the microphone.
Yeah. Bellamy, you want to come in and sit so people can hear you, or whatever you feel comfortable? Because what's listed here, Brian, is fee for TV services, septic system, so on and so forth, which then yield the $10,000. The other stuff you're referencing is either in a revolving fund, it goes there. And what did you say, Bellamy? How much went into the revolving fund of which one? You said 100,000 or 70,000 or?
I believe Brian said it was about 70 or 80,000 to the vacant building revolving fund. I don't have that number with me.
As of today, or as of May 31st, 101.
As of May 1st, 101?
Yeah.
And that's the one we set up for you, Paul, correct?
Through the board of health, correct?
Do we want 101,000 in that account alone? I think the goal was to be about 50 or less.
Didn't we cap it?
Councilor McGivern.
The issue with revolving funds is this is good revenue producing, and I think we know it's there, but we don't see it in the general fund, and now we have a $1.7 million deficit that we're trying to make up, but there's actually less than that because of these revolving funds are paying for some of these items in the budget. And the connection has got to be made, or we should do less revolving funds.
Yeah, if there's I'm almost positive the cap was 50, but if we're over that, or that number should be, like Joe was saying, offsetting, we got to put it somewhere.
It's supposed to go to the general fund over 50.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I thought.
So, hold on, Councilor Bresnahan. And
how come we're not using these funds to, appoint receivers or just appoint people to board up and make properties secure? I mean, you can still drive around and see, some buildings or some residential homes or,
We're using some of it to take buildings down.
Right.
I forget the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like $30,000 we spent, I think.
Right, well, that Paul can jump in on this, but that would be the point, I think, of that.
That's what we're using it for.
The vacant building permit revolving fund is so we can take the vacant permit money and fix properties or secure properties or whatever the case may be, right?
We just started using it this year for it just all happened months ago.
If I may just chime in on a question that was asked, because I had asked actually Kate about a week ago what happens to revolving fund receipts at the end of the fiscal year. And my understanding, as Councilor McGee pointed out, that it's capped at $50,000 in expenditures, and any remaining amount would get calculated as free cash. So it is capped at 50, but at the end of the year, my understanding is that it would then be lumped into the free cash.
That's the way the general fund monies would work in a given year. It doesn't take, you don't see them until the next year.
right.
But I just think we could easily go through $100,000 fixing properties in the city of Holyoke, just cutting grass.
And to your question, Councilor Bresnahan, it's the expenditure side of it so far has been limited to recording the liens. It's like a lot of good policy. It does take time to roll out. This year was really focused on we had an entirely new Munis module that, really multiple departments and really Kate Chakowski and the tax collector's office, with her Munis experience, really moved mountains to just get all of these bills into Munis and processing through. So I know there's a few demolition projects that are targeted for using this that are in the works. So it's understandably something that year to year, hopefully we'll see that progress represented in the numbers.
All right, so back to Brian. Anything else? Okay, so any questions, Joe?
Just, Brian, on the line item for animal control services, 53103, could you, before we ask questions, could you just run us through how this is used?
This pays TJ O'Connor. We contract Chicopee, Springfield, Holyoke. Contract. We had this discussion a few years ago, and I had brought in, they're here every single day, multiple times a day, for cats and dogs. They're not here for wildlife. They were supposed to renegotiate the contract. That should have went up, but they just let it stay for now. It'll probably go up again next year.
With I understand, and I'm a supporter of TJ O'Connor, but with all due respect, the wildlife is taking care of the cats and dogs.
Well,
I mean, we got bears and lions and tigers everywhere.
Fox.
I've had a bear in my backyard 3 times in the last 3 months. I'm getting off the track here. This goes directly to TJ O'Connor, and that's the negotiated fee if we want to maintain services.
Right.
How does a person like on the weekend get a hold of TJ O'Connor if they have a need for them?
The police, I think.
Have you tried that?
Not me.
Okay, you might want to let them know they're supposed to be doing something.
I'll talk to the animal control officer tomorrow. Why? What's going on, Joe?
They just say thank you for calling, but that's it. There's no follow up.
They're supposed to be showing up.
And we,
if the animal control officer is unavailable
53-105
on the weekend.
Yeah, they got to pay that. It's a set rate, isn't it, for ground population?
thank you.
Anyone? Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, so I'm glad Joe brought that up. I hope you can just respond to all of us, Brian, because I a couple times this past year, again, weekend calls, and just people in Elmwood calling me, and I can't get hold of this company. Is there an alternative?
To TJ O'Connor, well, we have the animal control that police will call him. If he's not available, it's supposed to go to TJ O'Connor.
Can we come
you might want to have Eric come in and speak.
Yeah, Brian, I guess what I'm just thinking, I just for maybe not this year, but for next fiscal year. And you just indicated that they're going to raise the rates, and it's $175,000. Is there?
The mayor negotiates this with the law department.
Yeah, no, good. That's great. I'm just asking you, since it's your department in your budget, can you research a suggestion for the mayor for a better use and a less expensive use and a more effective use for the $175,000 for fiscal year whatever it is, 20? Not so this fiscal year 19, for fiscal year 20 and going forward. You just said it's likely to go up. How much we don't know, but $175,000. I mean, we're just too. I'm not speaking for myself. I don't want to speak for Joe. I'm just a little tiny person in this whole thing. But I get these calls, and I don't think I'm the only one getting calls. And and how many calls I get? I mean, it's probably a fraction of what's really of the people being left without service by Thomas. And I hate to. Miss O'Connor was a I mean, he's a legend, you know, I hate to, you know, just that service. You know, Mr. O'Connor's a Hampton County legend, so I don't want to, you know, disparage his name at all, but there's that. The other one, Brian, I have for you, and you can take that suggestion whether you want, or, you know, otherwise, Brian, we'll talk about it some more down the line. Sharp's kiosk services, that is, that's just, who's paid for that?
The kiosk is up at the Council on Aging. Sharps aren't supposed to go into the solid waste stream anymore. So it's just a service that we've been offering to the citizens of Holyoke.
So how do we come up with $5,000? I guess that's my, so there's a kiosk at the Council on Aging. And what does this $5,000 supplement somebody's salary, or how does, what is it?
The company, Crystal out of Rhode Island supplies it. They empty it on a regular basis.
Oh, so this is a $5,000 for a contracted.
Yes.
As Linda said, a hazardous waste service. And we have one kiosk.
The city has one. Yes. There's one at Tapestry, and there's one at the health center. There's 3 of them that I know of in the city.
And the one that the city maintains is located at where?
Council on Aging.
The senior center.
Yes. Sure.
Diabetics?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Council President, then Peter.
Just to piggyback what Dave was saying, Fitzy, I mean, I always wanted the Holyoke to have basically its own, because I think the contract calls for 5 officers for Thomas J. O'Connor. I don't know if that's changed or not, but it was like Holyoke, Springfield, Chicopee. They're located in Springfield, and they're by the John Boyle O'Reilly Club, so they're not like close Springfield. Their headquarters is out Springfield, basically Indian Orchard. That's where their headquarters is, as you probably are aware of. But I just, you know, when Don Tryon was the animal control, we always kicked around the idea of having our own, like taking a section of the geriatric authority and, you know, putting those rooms up and just putting not jail cells, but cells up for stray dogs or whatever the case may be. You know, we talked to Linda, who ran the clinic on East Hampton Road, rather, that animal sanctuary up there. You need a veterinarian in order to do that. Westfield did it. They took over a program themselves, because they used to be part of the TJ O'Connor stuff, and they just weren't satisfied. It's a lot of money, and if you do call after hours, you do just get the answer machine. The officers are supposed to go in and check that answer machine and respond to them, but I mean, we basically, all we do is, I mean, does Eric still pick up roadkill? So an animal a deer gets hit by a car, you call the police department calls Eric. Eric's supposed to go out there with a body bag and grab it. And then do they still bring it down to the wastewater treatment plant? There's a freezer at the wastewater treatment plant, right?
Yes.
And we stick them all in this freezer down there. And then, like, once a month, we take all the cadavers out of the freezer, bring it to Thomas J. O'Connor, and they incinerate them. But we pay them to incinerate them per carcass. So there's that 175 is probably an accurate number, but there's a lot going on. You know, we burn them down there. 5 officers are supposed to be patrolling, kind of like the ambulance service, just routinely patrolling. They get a call, they're supposed to respond. But and basically the city of Springfield there's a board of directors, and it used to be Helen Carlton Harris, who ran the health department. She basically oversees that whole gig over there. And I don't know how much is going into the city of Springfield's coffers for us giving them 175, but all these communities are giving Thomas J. O'Connor this 175. It's probably going to go up to 200 grand next year, but that's just not really a question. But I always wanted to have our own animal control facility here in Holyoke. We're a city. We could have a small one.
Well, just 2 points. One, that we have a template from the city of Westfield, and second one, we just had a tour of that wastewater treatment plant, and I can assure you that we were not there was no part of the tour that was included with freezing carcasses or incinerate. I can assure you of that. I was early for the tour, and I stayed for the whole. Councilor Roman was there, Councilor Jordan.
It's the old incinerator building where you used to go in your trash.
I'm telling you, we were there.
And I'll do it. Brian's here. They're busy.
It's a big freezer.
So
There was a study done, Danny, and it wasn't feasible
For us?
Yeah, yeah.
about 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that if correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, and this is actually a question, if they come out and they give out a ticket to somebody for an unleashed dog, or you go into the bathroom and not picking it up, that ticket that they issue, that money goes to them, not to us.
Correct.
So on top of the 175, any tickets they issue to City of Holyoke citizens for violations of leash laws, they collect that money as well. So they're getting more than just the one. I mean, and I'm sure it's not $50,000, but they get the 175, and then they piggyback any ticket violations they give to people, so they're getting that revenue as well, which I thought should always come to our coffers, not to theirs, but it is what it is. That might be something that should be negotiated in the contract. Like if you issue a ticket, that money should come to us. They're Holyoke citizens.
Peter?
Thanks, Brian. Tough act to follow. I didn't know about the frozen carcasses either. I mean, I'd love to go down there.
Still got the keys.
Yeah. I think at one time this was based on the per capita, wasn't the population?
It is.
And it still is, okay, of the residents of the city, right? And I remember him talking about this, and the cost was really astronomical to try to have Holyoke do it. But I think we all learned something tonight, that maybe we get a better, call in who we call, and if there's a response to the animal control or the police or whatever, because I'm not getting a lot of calls, but I do see a lot of things out there that we could get in touch with somebody and try to get this taken care of on a...
I'll send you guys a process.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be good.
Phone calls coming in and out.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else? For Brian, sir? Brian, since we're asking anyone, anywhere at all in your budget that you can help out or can't touch?
Peter already asked, but I told him no.
We went on the record now, though.
Well, I
On the record, yeah.
I was asking more.
Online.
Not really, Todd.
Okay. All right, so with that, we're going to move on to, thank you, Brian,
Okay.
for coming tonight. Next is,
Yeah, it's working.
Marcos.
Yes. Every year.
Good evening.
good evening. All right, so if you have anything to offer, and then we'll go into questions on the budget.
Oh, I got it up front, huh? That question. It's like the question in Saw. Which part of the arm you want to lose? So this one's a gamble. The DEP compliance fees. Take it, and if we get a bill, then I'll be back. I can't guarantee that we will get a bill.
Where's that, Marcos?
The DEP compliance fees is the first line on the second page.
Oh.
57615.
57615, yes, a total of $4,500.
Is that for the,
The city of Holyoke gets, so once you have a property that's considered a brownfield and it's recorded with a release
Brownfield
tracking
fees,
number, you have to pay a fee every year. We've significantly reduced our liability. I can't tell you categorically that we have eliminated all of them, but this last fiscal year we did not get a bill. And that's the kind of thing where I don't go fishing for one. So that's why I'm saying it's a gamble, but if it is a liability we have, then I can either look whether if I have savings in my budget, do an internal transfer at that point, or go for free cash. As I said, this fiscal year we did not get a bill.
yeah, I always found that one funny, because even if we're in the process of taking on a brownfield, even with grants, they still assess us a fee.
Yep.
Yes.
Which was funny.
And that's actually how they fund some of their grant programs. Yeah.
So, Linda, then Joe.
That was mostly the shooting range, right, which has been remedied this year? That was the biggest part of
Yeah,
this?
the shooting range has been in that portfolio. Automania has been in that portfolio. And 191 Appleton has been on that portfolio in years past.
And we've done
Yeah, we've been cleaning
a lot
them
of
out.
work on those.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Joe?
Just a quick reminder on the revenue. At our former president's request and with the body working with the office and with HEDIC, we had HEDIC, instead of funding for certain salaries, fund for a percentage of the office. It's more than equal to what HEDIC uses the office for, but it comes along the lines of HEDIC's purpose of economic development. And HEDIC did take its annual meeting this evening about at 5 o'clock. We did vote to fund that percentage, which I believe, Marcos, is 48% of your budget?
46.
Not 48, 46,
6, I think, was on it, yeah.
Okay. And that's the...
for the economic development position.
For the economic development portion of the budget itself. And I just wanted to note that. And I think it makes it easier for the city. I told HEDIC this evening, I liked when we were just funding for certain people that were working closer with HEDIC or assigned projects from HEDIC. But this, I think, is easier for the city council to know the revenue coming in, and you know it's applied across the board for the economic development part of this budget. So HEDIC's been doing, it's more than its fair share, but HEDIC understands the times that the city are going through, and HEDIC's been funding about close to $90,000 to $100,000 each year.
Mike?
Okay. Marcos, line item 51240 for temp seasonal. As of May 31st, nothing had been spent out of last year's budget. Do you really think you're going to need that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I was raising my hand because I was going to suggest that one. This is a good line item to have, particularly summer help. I'm not in a position this summer to use it. I've just paraded with projects, so I know I won't have. I won't be using it this summer. If I could probably plan ahead if it is for next summer for something in July. So that would be a, yeah, if you need to cut something, I would say take that one.
Kiss it goodbye. That's a done deal. What about 53010? Other contracted services.
Yep.
It looks like it was running well below budget. Is that still the case? And it is a jump up even still.
Well, this is a weird one because I think the dollars expended reflect on a very old encumbrance that actually predates me. So at some point, the council approved, I think, a free cash transfer to this line item, and the encumbrance is carried. So it reflects expenditures in the front Dwight and Heritage Street project and the design. Well, you know, this is basically the main source of funds where I'm able to advance work in pre-development, design, title examinations, appraisals, things that I can't give you a definitive list today of things that make up the $20,000. I can tell you I've never left any money on the table. So if it has to be level funded, then I guess it is what it is, right? I'll only be able to advance as much as I have there. I never have a year where it's just left over.
Well, I get that, but the line item under it, parcel mapping services,
Yes.
53020.
Yes.
That was all transferred out of there and up into this other contracted services.
Mm-hmm.
So that really brought that number up to 26,000, but it's still, you're increasing the requested amount for contracted services, but the other line item that was transferred out is still in there, plus up 5,000 too.
Yes. So so you're referencing, to be clear, 53020 map parcel map services. This line item a year ago was in the assessor's office. We took it on because realistically we were doing all the engagement with the contracted service, ArcGIS. This is the city's property viewer when you go online. What we're attempting to do for this fiscal year is very likely either change the vendor or get an additional product for an existing vendor. Right now, the map, I mean, it's an okay map, but you can't really query across a broad sector of data sources. And through the problem property group, we're coordinating putting more data sources in there from the fire department, from the police data. There's been a lot of conversation about getting ward specific data and stuff like that. We can digitize that, and we're in a position of being able to do that. But if you can't really query for it, right, it's it has very limited use. So those types of products are more, they start in like the $12,000 range or $13,000 range per year. And I expect that there will be some cost for the moving from one platform to the other, making sure that the data transfers adequately. So $15,000 is my guess, my best estimate of what it would cost. If I had only $10,000 and I'd be level funded, it's very likely I would not be able to pay for a full year. So it would delay implementation.
Okay. So really, that's the parcel mapping service and contracted service is the same thing. So it's really $35,000.
No, parcel mapping services is specifically the city, the online property viewer. Right, that's specifically what that line item goes for. Other contracted services is stuff like land surveys, opinions from licensed site professionals for brownfields and contamination, title exams, basic site design that we can use for marketing property. Property photography, site analysis of different forms. That's where we use other contracted services. If your question is why did I transfer out money from other contracted services from parcel, right? Okay. If your question
parcel mapping to other contracts.
Right. So we contracted with our current vendor ArcGIS with the most basic of services, and have delayed on the maintenance of additional work on the parcel map because I don't want to spend more money on a product that I'm not confident that I'm going to have in August or September or October, right? So I could always pay for that later on if we add on another module, but I'm not going to be paying a company to work on something that, it's like you're not going to repair the transmission of your car if you're just going to buy a new car. Then, well, it was something like that. So I had some money left over there. I moved it to other contracted services because as we were doing due diligence on the block next to the Lawrence School where the middle school is being investigated, we found an oil tank underground. So I've encumbered the money to take it out over the summer. That's one of those things where if you don't do it immediately, then it becomes a logistical problem, right? Then the school year starts, people need the parking lot, you need to take that out. So this is where I need to have money to react quickly to those situations, and I didn't have enough money, but I was able to transfer out because saying, time-wise, I really don't need the computer services now. I can delay a couple of months.
All right. So combined, you're going to need. If you're going to need 35,000 in there next year,
I think I would. I mean, if you're saying you have to cut something, then I'm going to execute with the money I have. Right? So if you need to cut it, then there's going to be less work product. This isn't a padded budget. This is less than probably the demand that we have. So if I'm level funded at instead of a 20 at 16 from last year, then it's just less work I can advance. That's all.
Just how big was the oil tank they found up there?
I don't remember. I have the file. I can forward you what the LSP found.
Yeah.
That was, if you remember the colorful magnetometer map when we were discussing on Monday, Mater Dolorosa and the block, that image was taken from that report.
Yeah. I mean, was it 500 gallons or 5,000 gallons?
Literally, no idea. They probably read it 3 weeks ago, and it seems like an eternity.
Yeah. All right.
Peter? Also, I had you down. Joe, I had you down too.
Just to point out the revenue besides the HEDIC portion, there's another over $200,000 that comes in with some connection to this department.
Anyone else with regards to this?
I mean, if I may, also the marijuana fees. It's not here, but
don't push it.
All right, if there's no other questions.
If we got the casino, you could really push that there, Marcus, and we didn't get the casino.
We were the only non-abutting community to get a surrounding community agreement. I don't remember the number. 1.8 million or something like that.
All right, thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Have a good night. Next is Park and Rec. Hello, how are you? Good. Good evening. We'll turn it over to you, and then we'll go around the room.
Okay. I don't have a whole lot of things to say. Our municipal budget is pretty lean. It's about 20 to 25% less than it was 15 years ago. And we probably do about 20 to 25% more than we did 15 or 20 years ago, but we do a lot with our 3 revolving accounts. We have Roberts Field, Community Field, and a general revolving. So we do so much, I don't really want to go through everything, but if you have any questions, I'm here.
Okay, so just, anyone over here have questions for Park and Rec on their budget? Linda?
I just want to know if the revolving funds that we've set up have been a good thing for your department, given the other restraints that you have in the budget, and how that's working out.
I am so grateful for all 3 revolving accounts. Roberts Field account is strictly...
What page are we on? Can you just bear? I can't find
42.
42.
Thank you. I'm just going to see it.
Roberts Field is one of our revolving accounts, and when the school department's not using the facility, Park and Rec rents it. And every renter, anybody who rents a field gets a staff person. We also run the concession, and we take care of most of the equipment at the field, bathrooms, everything. So what and we still pay for the high school electrical bills for lights on the field. So we don't generally have much left over. We operate 3 golf carts too that are a little expensive, but it's been wonderful. It's been enough for us to operate, have a staff, pay people, and keep the equipment in relatively good shape.
Okay.
And do minor, some major repairs. Community Field is a godsend. We receive money every month from the cell tower rental. Park and Rec is able to pay for all the utilities, maintenance, most of the maintenance, year-round staff, skating. So that's been very good. And the other one is a general revolving fund. A lot of our permit fees, other than Roberts and Community, get put into that account, like adult softball. That basically, most of it is pays for the porta potties in the city, or a good part of it.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thanks, Terry. Can the commissioners send us an update as to the revolving fund balances?
I have them.
Well, I appreciate you have them, but can you send a communication to this? I don't need it right now, Terry.
Okay.
Would you send a communication to the City Council for our August meeting?
Sure, but they do fluctuate wildly. for staffing and, you know.
Do you want to?
Or buying something. They're not generally large accounts with hundreds of thousands of dollars, but yeah.
Yeah, you can just, and then why don't you send a 2-year comparison from August of 17 to
well, you know,
whatever,
it might
however
be
you want to do it.
more helpful. I have printouts here of all 3 of the revolvings with just the expenditures. That might be a little more
Well, why don't you send that then?
Okay.
That's.
I will.
Yeah, so since you've already created it, you could just send it to the clerk and she can forward it along to us. And then well, it's going to have to do with the budget for next year. We have a new park being created across Dwight Street.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's been dubbed as a public park. So have the commissioners voted to accept that park?
No, Counselor. The rec department hasn't received any notice that it would be a city park or it is a city park. I'm not sure about the DPW, but it's never come in front of the Park and Rec Commission.
Right, and so as we know, or as I've alluded to here, but we'll have a charter and rules hearing at some point, and we'll throw all the facts on the table that I can easily produce. That half that lot, that from Dwight to John, Mr. President, is owned by the city of Holyoke, because it always came with approved parking deck, and the other half is entitled, the deed was Holyoke Housing Authority, paid for originally by the Housing Authority, but as in November of last year, but fully reimbursed via CDBG funds, about $32,000 from CDBG funds, but the deed is still in the name of Holyoke Housing Authority for the half that faces out to Dwight Street. Now that's a legal fact. So I mean, and now we're saying, now we have before us, if the president recalls, before the DGR committee, a parcel across the street from the Holyoke YMCA. Well, the administration wants to use a part of that and convey it out. But there's a restriction via Article 97 of the Mass Constitution. Well, you can't just, you can't just give away parkland and carve it out. You need to swap it out 1 for 1. And the proposal, written proposal, is to swap out that park, which we just heard has never been accepted by the commissioners. So I just, not trying to beat a dead horse, but it's hard to, I've done a lot of research on this, so it's, but when we'll keep talking about it, and eventually Nelson will have a charter and rules at some point in the fall. There's no rush on this, and then we'll throw all the facts out in an open public meeting. But I just, for the members that are here, and the public listening, especially for the president, it's just good to hear some of these things, time and again. So that's, so we have an order in DGR, swap land, which, generally I think we're okay with that, but the proposed land we're swapping is a park that the city's not accepted, to my knowledge, and per what the department had just said. So, thank you.
Nothing at all has been presented to the Parks or the Park Commission, either about the Peasants Park or over here.
Is that our official, can I ask you this question? Is that the official name?
Yes.
Peasants Park.
Peasants Park.
I thought it was.
It happened sometime in the 90s for viewing stand for the parade, but it is its official name.
That's the official name.
Would you like to hear the story?
Well, actually, can I, before I hear the guy, I do want to hear the story, Joe. Actually, this is one of your stories I do want to hear. Can I ask one more question, Mr. President?
Sure.
The park at the far end of Maple, Sheared Park. One, it doesn't have one of those wiggly signs that you put up kind of at Crozier and Springdale and some other, it doesn't have one of those, those new fangled signs. There isn't a sign. And then the second one, and I filed an order on this, and I haven't had a response yet from anybody. So that chain link fence all along, is that Resnick Boulevard, Joe?
I think
yes.
So, yeah.
Is it Resnick? Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's just, there's already a fence inside, and there's a nice walkway. So I actually saw a mother, I'd love to hear my fellow counselors to talk about this. walking in the street with her child, walking against the traffic, going up Resnick Boulevard, coming up 391. Young mother with child. Well, there's a perfectly lovely sidewalk in Sheard Park that mother can't access because there's that good-looking chain link fence that says, "Welcome to Holyoke." We love to see chain link fences with trash pelted against it. Welcome to Holyoke, Mass. You know, geez, what a good look for for crossing into the city off of 391.
I don't disagree with you. The mayor's actually brought it up a few times, and I've had discussions with Michael McManus about it.
Yeah, because I brought it up here
I know
about 4 months ago.
It was put there for safety reasons. At this point, I don't know. It's a trash collector, and there's weeds on it.
Safety reasons such as what?
When did it go up? Do we know when it went up?
Years ago, Todd. But safety reasons, it's like somebody's going to, what, fall into the road? Because they could do it at Crozier, walk on the sidewalk. This is even easier than walk on the sidewalk at Sheard Park. It would be a lot easier to fall into Route 5 than it went into Resnick.
I don't disagree with you.
Because the sidewalk goes, and somehow we don't have a fence along the perimeter of Crozier. Somehow people manage to navigate that walkway. So I'm even. All right, hold on. So, all right. Anyhow, all right. So I want to hear Joe's story.
Well, no, first.
I thought we get back on the budget.
All right.
Councilor Lisi was first.
Thank you.
And then Joe.
Thanks, Terry, for coming down. You had mentioned that the Parks Department is paying for the lights on at the high school field. Any other fields?
Oh, sure. There's only 2 lit ball fields in the city: Mackenzie Field and McNally Field behind Kelly School.
And you're paying for those as well?
Oh, sure. We pay the utilities, but the money we pay for is generated through adult playing fees, like adult softball leagues and with the porta potties and our utilities.
Okay, and then so Mackenzie Field, the other field was
McNally Field.
McNally.
And with I'm sorry, I guess there's 3 because Mackenzie. There's also John Young, the softball diamond.
And then the high school. So in all together, do you have a sense of what you're paying in utility fees?
No. I know I could easily figure it out because I know the wholesale cost for Roberts for 1 hour of lights is $35. John Young, I think, is $25. Mackenzie's $27. I don't have a set amount. It depends on who rents it, the number of games and rainouts.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know how much it is, and I understand that you're using sports fees in order to offset those costs. But I think that there's interest in renegotiating some pilots that we have out there, including with the G&E. So maybe we can, see if the G&E can swallow some of that. And it'd be nice to know if it's a significant amount or not, because
Community Field is a giant amount. Thankfully, we have the revenue to cover it. And it's mostly a giant amount when the refrigerated ice skating path is on. That's about $3,000 a month to run.
$3,000 a month?
Yes. We do collect some fees at Community Field, but mostly for rentals, for the pavilion rental and picnic tables. Nowhere near enough to cover the utilities.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm expecting an answer today, but I'd be interested in knowing what those fees are. And of course, I would like to bring them to the attention to the mayor as he goes to the negotiating table about those pilots.
But I can tell you that the gas and electric, we pay the same rates as the city for the lights. But I can tell you the adult leagues pay a higher cost. We charge the youth rates the base rate, or not even anything. Hopefully the adult fees pick up for the youth rates.
Yeah. All right. I'll look forward to hearing what those numbers are. Thank you.
Mr. McGivern?
Gary, the Blue Sox contract, does that pay for their use of the field and electrical costs? Is that a revolving fund?
Yes. That gets put into our general revolving account. I can tell you it's basically a break-even deal.
That's fine.
Okay.
I get confused because Department of Recreation, which you have sole authority over with the commission, and Department of Parks, which comes under the DPW.
Correct.
But there's interaction because you're renting out the fields, and there are certain things that when you rent out causes expense under Mike's budget.
Correct.
In certain things, you know, vice versa. Let me finish my question.
Okay.
So, is it working? I mean, from a budget point of view, it's a nightmare. From a cost efficient, using the people for more than one responsibility does make a lot of sense. And certainly with the equipment and the people with the ability to operate the equipment, it makes sense that comes under the DPW. Yep. But that's got to cause some problems when you're leasing out the field or using the field.
I can tell you the general rule of thumb, the utilities we pay for basically are centered around the revolving account. Mackenzie Field, most of them. Mackenzie Field, Roberts Field, Community Field. We take in enough fees to cover them. Small neighborhood parks like a Pena Park or even a Carlos Vega, we charge basically no fees. So those utilities are all paid for by, come out of the Department of Public Works budget.
And I'll mention the dilemma I mentioned earlier this evening and ask you a different question about revolving funds, because Councilor Bartley's question kind of covers it in general. But how much of revolving funds, I'm not expecting an answer this evening, offsets any of your line items in your budget or the DPW budget?
How much?
Well,
probably about 95%.
Yeah. So we're looking at a deficit that isn't as much of a deficit as it is because the revolving funds are paying for some of these line items.
No, I was just going to say, but we're a much different department than anybody else because our outside programs and activities are based on...
How much your revolving fund income pays for the line item for energy, gas, and electric in this budget?
If you notice, we don't have a utility budget in the recreation.
I'm on page 43 because that's what I just was talking about.
That's not
I know
the
it's not your
recreation
budget.
budget.
That's why I said it's confusing because you're collecting the money under revolving fund and yet it's coming out of Mike's budget.
Well, that's, oh, you're right. But the money we collect isn't part of Mike's budget for only a few facilities. Community Field, McNally Field.
So what gas and electric from Mike's budget is $25,000 for parks?
Every street light. Is it just gas and electric or is it water?
Street light is not parks.
Oh, there's street lights in parks. We get bills for them. Electricity used. Water sprays. Everything else, I guess.
Right. So I'll rephrase my question. Is any of the revolving fund money used to pay for anything that is in the line item in your budget?
Pay for, no. Augment, yes. Like
Salaries?
Recreation, no. Yes, I'm sorry. Not any full-time salaries.
No, but
we
it
also
offsets the salary.
We
need to
in
know
a calendar year, there's anywhere between 50 and 75 part-time employees. Some people might work an hour a year. They're all seasonal. Well, they're mostly all seasonal.
But you have $70,000 budget for this coming year.
Correct. Community
Revolving
Field
funds offsets how much of that?
None of the money is spent for community field personnel, part-time personnel, and that's staffed year-round. That comes right out of the revolving.
So you're not double dipping in the budget?
No.
Do you have a budget for your revolving funds?
No. A budget?
A budget?
No.
I think you need
Unless I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, you just pay as you go what you need, or do you?
No, we anticipate what will come in every year.
Yeah.
No, actually, we don't. The maximum at the end of the fiscal year that could be in the general revolving is $10,000. So if there's ever any left, it would be maybe $2,000 or $3,000, and I try to buy like new park benches, but it's nothing. It's not a critical. It is hard, Counselor, just because we don't operate like any other city department. I don't mean to sound so flippant.
You don't. Terry, you and I go way back. You never sound.
Yeah, I don't mean to like, oh, whatever, because.
Now, you want to hear a story about Peasants Park? All right, real quick, because you're the director of parks. You should know this. Across the street on Beach Street, every year for the parade, St. Patrick's Day Parade, David, as you got down to the corner of Appleton and Beach, you turned the corner, there were a group of people that had signs numbered 1 through 10. As the band came through, if they liked the band, they put up a 10 or a 9. If they didn't like a band, they put up a lower number. Now, in 1980-81, when the Board of Aldermen marched by, they had -0s going up for us. And then a group of them came to that Ward 4 councilor back then, okay, and said, what can we do across the street here? And I said, it'd be a great passive park, nice recreational benches, trees, grass, great idea. They formed an organization. We got the city to get on board, and that's how it became the park. The man who ran that little reviewing stand, his nickname was Animal. Animal's no longer with us, but he was a great guy, very hard worker, and Animal was named at the Peasants Viewing Stand. And after Animal died in a tragic accident out in Appermont Highway. After he passed away, we named the park Peasants Park in his memory.
Was that a motorcycle accident?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to get into all the details, but yeah, he was a good guy. And that little sliver of land was never part, and I don't believe it is part of the park now. Because, I just saw what they showed me. I meant to tell Marcus that, but we backed off doing that because someone was trying to up the ante on eminent domain. They were pretending to develop it, and then we told them you can't develop it because it's too skinny. Doesn't meet the dimensions.
I got a question.
Question?
Terry, how many staff do you have maintaining the parks?
0. That's all under the Department of Public Works.
So these 5 positions under the Department of Parks.
Right. That's all.
That's under
that
Mike?
whole page is under DPW.
Well, let me ask you this: how many parks do you have?
Oh, jeez. There's 24 developed park, and there's like 64 parcels.
I mean, how come you guys never? I mean, it just seems that. How come nobody ever asked for help in the park for like another body in the park?
I have no idea.
I mean, because I did the math. It's like one guy has like 8 parks to maintain.
It's more than that.
Right. It's crazy.
They're interchangeable. I think the merger that happened in 2002 was great. We operate nicely. We operate with them. I don't know why people haven't been asking for more personnel.
Because you see other departments are getting more personnel.
I know. And the few that are remaining aren't getting any younger.
Well, they're seasoned guys.
Yeah.
You don't have any fresh blood coming through the doors.
And we have some beautiful facilities, and we keep adding more, and we don't have the manpower. I don't know why there hasn't been more of a push.
Perhaps next year you guys might want to throw in a number, throw in a body.
I've been advocating for them for years. And the DPW, they're not overflowing with staff either.
All right. How about Wyatt Harper Park?
Poor Wyatt Harper. There's no plans right now for Wyatt Harper.
Right, but I don't know that has there ever been any plans for that park?
No.
I mean, we all know that you have to.
And I'll tell you why on the recreation end, I have never really pushed for it because what would we do with it? There's no way to walk there safely.
Well, I mean, so why don't we find another parcel of land and sell that to the Holyoke Housing Authority, and they could put a parking lot there?
Mayor Sullivan was the closest administration that came to. Somebody was interested in developing something right off the highway, but I don't know if it's wetlands.
Getting if you go out through Bowden Village on a Friday or Saturday night, there's no way you're going to get a fire truck through there.
I know.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe we could loosen that street load a little bit and talk to Matt Manville and say, Matt, maybe he's got a parcel of land that he could give us right down the street for that parcel of land up there.
Councilor David was talking about Chapter 97. It's not that easy. He's right. There has to be a land swap if it's a designated park.
Right.
But it has to be 3 times as big as the park that you're giving up and hopefully developed. So that would be a hard sell for any swap out, but.
We'll put a swing in there or something. I mean, come on, it's killing me.
Well, it's unsafe for a kid to
walk
walk there.
They took it down. It's gone. Nothing's in there except grass and cats.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad, that one little bench.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because I sent it twice now. I know you don't maintain the parks, but do you review the parks at all?
Yes.
And categorize
Yes.
problems with the parks?
Yes.
Where's my list?
I know there is a completed list, but I don't know the status. I know the status of some, but I have no idea what's happening with Kennedy Park, other than it's time for a new playground. And
Now, I'm not talking one park. I'm talking
I know, all.
parks. And I keep going to all these parks. This is now year 3 for some, year 4 for others. Rowan Park. If you go to Rowan Park, we had baseball there, and you go to the big playscape one, the ladder rope going up. It's been broken for 3 years.
I know.
Now, the climbing wall there, that one's broken. Someone just tied it and tied a knot to try and hopefully the kid won't fall off it. There's no mulch. There's concrete sticking out of the bottom of the slide. If you go to Kennedy Park, there is still a piece of plywood there. This is now year 4 for that piece of plywood. It's supposed to be hard plastic so a child doesn't get hurt. It's a piece of plywood. How long is it going to last before it breaks and the child falls off? The tall playscape one. All I asked for from the department, it's now the second time I saw in your minutes that you received it, and it was gone. Where is the list of all the mistakes in the park?
Don't have a list? Obviously not. There was, Mr. McManus did do a list with dollar amounts. I know on it.
I didn't ask for a dollar amount. A list of all the
that needs repairs. There is a list in existence. Yes, we've received it. I don't know the status of the repairs though. Other than I know he's trying very hard to spend, or at least come up with enough money to buy mulch for city parks.
Can we get the list?
Yeah. Yeah. And Kennedy Park, I know, is really costly, and I just would recommend installing new equipment because it's over 20 years old. There aren't parts to be had for Kennedy Park, so there it sits. It should just be removed.
That's the whole point of the list. Here, Todd, Kennedy Park. These are all the problems with it. By the way, Kennedy Park is 20 years old, and therefore you can't rehab it with parts, therefore the cost is X. There is graffiti. There is swear words at Rowan Park. There are broken apparatus that a kid's going to fall off of. You need X amount to fix it. I mean, filed it twice. It's now a year old.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you didn't receive it. I do have a lot. Excuse me. I do have a lot of input into what goes on in the list. I don't have a lot of input as to the funding that goes towards it.
That's our job.
Pardon me?
It's us.
No. Oh, some, but the requests have to be made.
But I mean, if I may, Mr. President, what I hear you saying is that you want a list with all the costs, so that we could then start chipping away at it. We're not expecting you to make those repairs and to take it upon yourself.
I understand.
Okay.
Oh, I haven't. I know Michael did it. That's why I don't know why you don't have it, because that's why he did it. So I will. I have seen it. There is one in existence.
If you can send it to us, send it to the clerk, please, and get it to us. Thank you.
Well, just along those lines, I was going to suggest that we had the CPA. So I'm hopeful that some of the proceeds, to the max extent possible from that fund, will be headed towards the Parks Department. I've also advised our administrative assistant to start sending us the minutes from the CPA committee meetings, because we don't have the minutes coming in, so it's hard for us to know what's happening on those lines. So I don't know where they are with their budget, Mr. President, but that would be somewhat useful information, especially this time of year. And just while I'm on that thought, if I could, I would like to ask the President if it would be possible, because we don't get the retirement board minutes. We had them sent to us once. We don't get them. That boggles my mind. We've asked repeatedly. Don't get those minutes. I would also suggest to you that in my career here, while I've always received monthly minutes from Waterworks and Gas and Electric, I don't think they're posted, in my knowledge, they've not been posted once to our agendas. and those are municipal bodies, and they do, they're time stamped by the clerk's office. So it would be nice if they were just pro forma part of the city council agenda. I mean, but we get all their minutes mailed to us, so I'm not worried about that. Although I'd rather have them emailed, but hey, that's just me. Thank you.
Anyone else for Park and Rec? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Treasurer's office?
Yes.
Good evening. All right, so page 6. We'll turn over to Sandy. Just a general review of the budget, and then as we ask anyone if there's anywhere we can cut, any options, thoughts, and then we'll go around the room.
Okay, I'm willing to sorry, my cheaters here, 53050, which is land court expenses. I'm willing to drop that down 25,000.
And the
so it'll be from 100 to 75.
And have you? I know you have, but just so it's on the record, you looked that over, and 75 would be sufficient.
I'm comfortable with that. Yep. I did a little summary of my tax titles, and as of May 31st, I've collected $450,536 and some change, and I was able to take some good pieces of property off the tax title. One in particular was 108 Cabot Street, which everybody knows as the trucking company. Just a little history, 2017, I was able to collect $859,000. So it's going down, as you can see. So my thought process is I can probably work with 75.
Okay, anything else or anything you want to share about the department or?
I think my department, my employees, I just want to put a name to the titles just so everybody knows who's who in my office. My assistant treasurer right now is Ashley Rivera. She's also in a non-union position, so her salary right now for 2019 will be $47,600. I have a senior deputy treasurer. That's Rosella Burgos. We call her Rosa. That's a union position. And then we have what we call a floating clerk, which we talked about last year. The floating clerk right now is Bridget Allen. It's also a union position, and she works between the city tax collector and the treasurer. When the tax collector's office is busy with real estate taxes and motor vehicles, she helps out. In the treasurer's office, she's actually my backup to my payroll person, which is the senior deputy treasurer. She does payroll, accounts payable, and she works on my tax titles for me. That's my staff, and of course, myself. Let's see, I think that's it. Anybody have any questions?
Okay. Joe?
Sandy, if I could, I'm looking on page 47. I wanted to have a little discussion about short-term debt and some other items that comes under your purview.
Can I ask Bellamy to sit with me because I don't have page 47?
Anytime.
Thank you.
Bellamy, Sandy. as you're sitting down, the short-term debt is approved by the mayor at 50,000. The current year is 25,000. I know this is a moving target, but I just wanted an explanation of what we're anticipating. Need a code item, code object? That's right. 59290.
Yeah, that would be our bans that we take out in regards to projects that the city council has voted on. And once the project is completed, then we request a bond.
And general, maybe not bond by bond, but are we looking at any bonds coming to the end in the near future?
I think in 2019.
You mean winding down? Is that the question?
Winding out? Yes.
The auditor put together a schedule of that, looking at all of our bonds out to 2034. I think that's, no, I think it now goes out to 2036. And as I recall, in 2020, we are going to start to see I'll say a significant fall off. It goes down $100,000 or $200,000. So yes, we're expecting to see some of that, not this year, 2019, but in either 2020 or 2021. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but
no, that's
I can
okay.
send you the schedule if you'd like to see it.
If we could get a copy of the schedule, that'd be great.
I think it's real easy to understand.
Sandy, earlier this year, did you have to use bond anticipation notes to meet the payroll?
Yes, I did. I had to take out a RAN, which was $10 million. And the interest incurred on that was $77,777.77. We were able to pay it by June 15th of this year, based on the money that we collected from the tax collector on real estate taxes.
Okay, so that is paid in full. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Oh,
just the one right below you mentioned, Sandy, you mentioned 53050, and I was at one point I was going to recommend $35,000 cut, but I heard you say 25,000, so I'll stick with that. The one right below that's 53055. And I see $10,000, but I'm just wondering what's been expended to date on that one? Do you have, or at least through May 31st, if you have that number?
Unfortunately, I don't, but I can send you what we've expensed so far. This one is the fees, the certificate of redemptions. And when we foreclose on a property, it's at least, I'm going to say at least $550 for, and then $175. So the $550 goes to Boston, and the $175 goes to the Springfield Registry of Deeds.
I was just wondering if is there some flexibility in that budget line? That's why I'm asking if there was some flexibility.
You know what? I probably could cut it about $2,000. How's that? Where did you want to cut it?
No, I want to hear from you.
Do you want to do 8? I can do 8.
No, I wanted to get a just a real number from you that.
Okay, and I can look at that and see how much I've spent so far this year. Yeah. I really, to be honest with you, I don't know.
If you want to send it to the president, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for coming down and discussing this budget. I'm looking at the flex spending account administration.
Yes.
53060 was 15,000 last year and 25,000 this year.
Yes. And
is there a reason for that?
Yes, that has gone up. It's $6,250 a quarter. What has happened is with everybody with taking on health insurance and out-of-pocket money, everybody, a huge majority of the city employees are using the FSA, the task card, right, which task vendor administers it. There are a third-party vendor that take care of any issues.
So because more people are into it, the cost has risen?
Correct. When we first started introducing the task plan, which I believe was 2 years ago, the administration fee was not as much because we didn't have as many enrolled. And now we have a huge enrollment between the school, city, and water department actually joined. Yep.
So there's no way that you could use that out of in-house? That something has to be outside?
No, that has to be a third party, because they also make sure that we're in compliance with the expenses incurred.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sandy, thanks for the time you spent with me the other day. One of the things we talked about was on that the land court expenses. We spent quite a bit with Seidel and Seidel. Just as a ballpark, do you know roughly how much that was spent with Seidel?
I would say it's probably about $50,000, because they're the ones I go to when we have legal problems that our city solicitor, Paul Pear, doesn't have the time.
Yep.
I can just pick up the phone, send an email to Amy, and she gets back to us right away, even with Paul. So they're a great asset to the treasurer and to the city.
Yep, no, I get it. Thanks.
No one else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Veteran Affairs. Hello, sir.
Good evening.
I did get your email. I told people you weren't coming.
I wasn't going to come. I was at a conference.
Here,
so I am here.
You can...
Now you wish you didn't, right?
Yeah. I watch you guys on YouTube. I got enough of you guys there. Well, it's accessible, so that's a good thing. So no, you can't have any of my money. There's just, I have 9 line items, and I think in the last year we've done a lot with what we were given in the past. Just to review what we do and what we have been doing, we're charged with administering the state's Chapter 115 Veterans Benefits Program, which is a needs-based program. It falls under the same title and chapter as public welfare. We are also, since 2014, been required to assist veterans with applying with federal benefits, which we often don't talk about and has been taking up more of our time. This particular last year, I think we expended fiscal year 2017, we expended $364,000. The proposed budget is for $361,000. Of that, $350,000 of it is what gets expended on Chapter 115 benefits, of which the city gets about 75% of that back. Now, with the other lines, we've moved numbers around to actually reflect what we're doing. There's 2 big purchases that we've made in the last year. One was a multi-use machine, high-volume scanner, fax, printer. It's 2018. Faxes are going out of style. Everything gets scanned and emailed and uploaded into systems and databases. We scan consistently. We're converting a lot of our documents into historical files that we put into a new database that we call VetraSpec. VetraSpec cost our office $400 per person or per license. And what that does is allows us to create historical information of veterans who come into our office to receive services and or file VA claims. So, for instance, the city of Holyoke brings in about $500,000 a month in VA funds. We contribute to that number by providing VA benefits applications and submitting that information to the VBA. Right now we have 141 pending issues with veterans from the city that they're filing for VA claims. And the number that's attached to, you know, if those do get adjudicated in the favor of the veteran, what dollar amount that is, it's roughly, we're averaging about $1,200 per person that they bring into the city when they adjudicate these claims. On average, I can tell you that our office is now interacting with, or we have about 160 to 190 interactions with veterans a month. And all with the same budget that we've been working with. Our Chapter 115 budget number, so the 57,700, is slightly going down because we're offsetting people's need with alternative sources of income, which includes VA claims. Last year, we placed 4 different families into homes or apartments in the city using the Chapter 115 program, and we were able to get outside agencies that have federal money to assist us with the first and last deposit with that. So we're looking at other sources for supplementing what we give our veterans. One of the other things we did this last year was we became a VA work study site, which allows a veteran who's in school utilizing GI Bill benefits or any of their education benefits to work in our office at the rate of minimum wage. So they're there to do all the stuff I don't want to do. And we've been successful in having someone apply and work in our office, and has currently converted about 700 records from paper records to digital records in our database. We only have 15,700 more to go. So, but those are the numbers. The salaries are what they are. They've been negotiated, but we did move a few dollars around from line to line, but nothing significant. Any questions?
Councilor Bartley.
Okay, thank you for the summary. I just want to, since you mentioned you're trying to supplement resources, I know we've got a beautiful building, the War Memorial, and then there's a commission. Just and I'll look at the budget. Is that another revolving fund? Is that or so when you rent out that hall, when the commissioners rent out that hall, the proceeds are kept at the.
They don't go to me. There's actually a whole different budget just for the War Memorial building, and I believe that building costs you somewhere about $130,000 a year to maintain. But it has nothing to do with my office. It's directly with the commissioners.
The commissioners themselves.
That's correct.
And is $130,000? Is that supplemented by the city of Holyoke, or is that paid for by the?
I think
rental?
that's all paid by the city of Holyoke.
All paid for by the city of Holyoke. Now, what about hall rentals? So if you rent it out to say Palafrit,
I couldn't tell you what happens with that money. I'm not part of that commission.
45.
45 is another one, yeah.
Okay, I'll look a little more in depth at that. So but that's just for the commissioner. So I would talk to Mr. Riffenberg.
Oh, he's resigned. He's no longer the chair.
Oh, okay. Who's the chair now?
Chris Sims is the interim chair.
Okay. And so if I want, is that a male or female?
Male.
Mr. Chris Sims. Okay. If I want to reach Mr. Sims, I can contact you.
I'll relay you his information. Absolutely.
Would we just do that anyhow? Because I'll have a couple of questions for Mr. Sims.
Sure. You like it via email?
I would prefer via email. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
And then just 2 questions relative to the budget at 51510. So there's a sick leave buyback and nothing expended in 18. So I'm just wondering what are we doing with? Are we anticipating something or?
So at the end of every calendar year, our association gets to sell back our leave, our sick leave, to the city.
Oh, I understand that. So we didn't. So is that what we? So you anticipate that'll be the same amount at the end of this?
I believe that's the cap.
Okay.
That dollar amount's the cap.
So I'm just wondering, is there any flexibility there?
I can use my sick leave.
No, I realize that, but is there any flexibility in the budget, or is that something that you fully expect that'll be spent in buyback?
I project that I would use most of that. I typically don't use too much sick leave.
Okay, and then for 54200 office and professional, I don't see a whole lot expense in 17. I didn't in the account in and I don't really see much expense in 2018. And then I see a budget that goes, was that what you just mentioned about the scanning?
Sure. So if you look at the expenditures for the 52400, expended in 2017 is $5,001. At the time, they had a contract for like $100 a year for this machine that did nothing but.
Well, I'm at five. I'm not at 524. I'm at 542.
This is where it came from.
Okay.
Initially, we got some money into that top line and brought it down to this new line to pay for our copy machine now. So our copy machine is roughly $3,600 a year, and the software that we use for our database is about $1,300 a year. But also, with that said, we're trying to go to a less paper model. We have digital signature pads in our office. We print a lot less. We have yet to buy paper this year.
Okay, that helps. Okay, thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, thanks for coming down and discussing your budget. I'm looking at the head clerk is part-time. Is that just one position? Is that the only position you've had there in that office?
Right, so we're like 2.7 FTEs, so she's there 25 hours a week.
Okay, and that covers that. And now so part-time, is that benefits with that position?
Yes,
or?
I believe she has to pay for benefits out of there.
Okay. And the investigator, you don't have that, you haven't had that position filled in a couple of years?
No, there's been movement in positions prior to me getting here. I actually believe that our office is better served with 3 full-time employees. The time that we're spending with each veteran is increasing. These notes taking, having 170 notes per month that we take and creating historical information is taking more time. The administration of the Chapter 115 program really isn't, I say it's about 20-30% of what we do. The rest of it is referrals, resources, following up on people's challenges. So we're struggling to keep up with everything internally. I think we could do a better job, and just recently coming back from an association meeting with veteran service officers, I'm in better position than most, but still we agree that if we're going to serve our veterans in our city and really know who they are, have the information to say, you've been to us 4 times because you've gone homeless or you needed help with your utility bills, to have that historic information and be able to execute a plan with them, you have to spend time with them. And at 1:30 every day, I lose somebody, and it's just me and Wilfredo, and then we deal with walk-ins and phone calls all day long. So. Okay.
And on the position, you said the amount, the 115, Chapter 115 money, that comes back to you on is it a yearly basis, quarterly basis from the state?
That comes back on a yearly basis. It lags 12 months, and it goes back on the cherry sheet.
So that comes into the funds too?
That's correct. So roughly 75% of it comes back. There are things that we pay for that we get 100% back for. So if we're executing funds to prevent homelessness, we get 100% of that back. But things like buying flags for the cemeteries during Memorial Day, we don't get that money back. We get 75% of that, but that comes back, 12 months later.
Okay, so a good part of this budget then comes back into the general fund.
And that's correct, and we're not taking into account all the work we do with VA claims that get adjudicated in the favor of the veteran in the city. We have no real visibility on it. Every once in a while I can call someone to get a report of how much money is coming into the city, but because we don't have access to what's called VBMS, we have no way to see like how many claims we actually got adjudicated, in a specific amount of time. And we're looking to work towards accreditation and then in the following year by joining a different association.
Right. So when you get that somebody help with the VA federal benefits, that sort of comes off of what you're using for the state benefits that are.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Bacon.
Thanks for coming down.
You're welcome.
So I know that you get the 75% and there's about a year lag, overall. But in terms of what you can capture by getting the billing in timely and meeting all the rules to accomplish that return from the state, how would you say your office is doing with capturing what you can?
Well, one of the reasons why we went to a scanner instead of faxing things into Boston was because one of the first few months that I was here, I was reviewing our request, and we had a handful of denials because the quality of the image that we sent for a receipt up to Boston degraded through the fax, and it was denied. We're getting a lot better in capturing all of our requests. As a matter of fact, we're now at a point where we take the report physically off our request system from Boston, print it out. We move some numbers around because we take we can take individual benefits and pay direct vendors from there, and handing that right over to the auditor, and everything gets paid that month. And so when we close out at the end of the month and we attest to the fact that we're requesting, you know, $30,000 in reimbursement for the month of June, we actually expended those funds in June. So we've gotten better by changing some of our processes.
Okay, so it's pretty tight at this point?
At this point it is, yeah.
Okay. And how long would you say it's been tight?
Like 2 months.
Okay, so this year that we're going into, starting in July, should be good.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right. Oh, Joe. Sorry, Joe.
Bellamy's still sitting behind me?
Yes.
Bellamy, on the recap sheet, where would I see the reimbursement for the funds we're talking about?
Is this on? Okay. On page 2,
yep.
Item 3, estimated receipts and other revenue sources. A1, cherry sheet estimated receipts, $85,373,498. That's all of the cherry sheet together, including the veterans benefits. It's the Chapter 70 for the schools, it's veterans benefits, it's the library stipend. There's a couple of other, I can't remember what all the different cherry sheet items are, but that's where it is.
Okay. Not here, but broken down. You have it broken down.
Oh, yeah. Can we send it to you?
How big is it?
It's a page.
I would love it, yes.
It's one page. Yeah.
Please.
I'll send you 2 pages. The second page is the expenses, the assessments from the state, too, if that's not too much.
Thank you. No, that'd be great. Sure. I just don't want to waste any trees. I know, you're going to email it.
I'm going to send it by email.
Councilor Lacey?
I just have one quick question. I think you had noted that you are experiencing about 160 visits a month?
So what we're recording is like anything you would do as case notes or case management. We're recording about 160, 170 per month. It doesn't include some phone calls and emails and things like that. That's in addition to what we're doing.
And could you give us a sense of what that is up from, like maybe last year or the year before?
There was no mechanism to capture that data before.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is the assessor. Getting to the end. And Peter's breaking stuff. How are you, sir?
Time to retire, Peter.
Page 5. That thing's probably gone now. All right, Tony, we'll open up to you. I think you kind of know what's going on. You've been here, so we'll...
Make sure your mic is on.
Mike, turn it.
It's personnel expenses. The budget's about $34,000. Out of that 34, about 12 would just go straight to Patriot software licensing. I have some other 10 and another 5 for outside vendor services. And besides that, I think 10,000 from last year went to planning and development for mapping. They took over that section because Jeff's over and does all the planning and mapping changes for AGI, which is our website on on the internet. So other than that, I mean, I'd love to give something back, but I'm pretty up against it right now with just that amount of money.
Councilor Bacon?
I just have one question. Are you turning anything back to the general fund at the end of this year?
Whatever's left over will go. I know I have in the past. It might be between maybe close to $1,000, maybe.
Yeah, because it just looks like there's a couple lines that you might have $1,000 in.
And you know, Debbie sends her regrets. She's at the Cape this week, so she's at conference this week. So she went this year, and we haven't gone in a while. But you know, to defer expenses and get amount of credits, she went this year, and I'm going to UMass in August. So that personnel or travel will probably go down after she gets back on Monday.
Thanks.
Joe?
Tony, how many voting assessors are we now?
There's 3.
And who's the third?
Legal.
Jesus, I can't even remember. I can't even remember her name right now. But she, we pay her out of our. She works for South Hadley Assessors Office.
That's what my question was. Where are you paying her? I
pay her out of my assessment update. So I give her a stipend once a year, $500, and it's never been on personnel, you know, and through payroll. So it's worked out. Pay her right at the meeting once a year.
Thank you.
We got legal.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things we had to do, and we made it legal. So it's worked out. She's smart, and that's it.
It might be legal, but $500. No, I'm sure she's wonderful, but $500 wasted.
Yeah,
unnecessary is what I'm saying.
I know, but
doesn't change
the
anything.
state was hounding us for so many years.
I know.
For 3 years.
The state should have paid for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get the Quinn bill.
Unfunded mandates, Mr. President.
I know them well. Floating clerk.
Yeah, that's Heidi Morin.
Moved up.
She's excellent. She's been a godsend. She's done a tremendous amount of work. The assistant assessors, Carolyn Villegas-Bresnahan, she does very well. And Debbie's done great work. I mean, for the 4 of us, we have everything pretty much well done in the office between excise and real estate bills. So.
But the point is, it says increase to full-time position to absorb new CPA work.
Yes, and she handled all of the CPA exemptions, CPA applications, and then she's handling all the veterans and elderly exemptions also.
Wasn't money supposed to come from the CPA to help fund that?
If it does, this will be the first year that we'll get some. I mean, hopefully that we can, I mean, if they were to give it to us, I'd just probably give it back to the general fund, so.
But that was the.
So, if we could work on maybe a stipend from the CPA.
But wasn't that the requirement, that due to the influx of work, that money was supposed to go over?
Well, these are the first years we're collecting.
I know, but that's not factored in here.
Yeah,
shouldn't it be?
I don't have any revenue source for that, so.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
No, it should go. It should be paid by the CPA committee into the general fund to offset the salary.
Right.
Right.
Just
so
like EDIC puts the money into.
But is that being done? Is my question.
I don't think they even have money yet. I don't think they voted on it.
They do. They collected. They've collected about $400,000 out of the $497.
No, but they haven't paid their clerk yet.
That would be something.
I think they can spend money till July or something.
Oh, they have to wait till July.
July 1st, I think.
I said it wrong. They can't. They haven't made the actual expenditures yet. They're just discussing them.
Right. So they'll have a committee meeting. They can send money to, like, a line item for services, most likely, and that would then go back to the general fund. I mean, right now we have to put her on the books, but say even if they paid half of her salary through the CPA.
What are they required to pay? Wasn't there a percentage?
It's allowed to pay. I don't know if it's required.
Allowed to pay.
I'm not sure if it's required.
Can we get an answer to that?
I'll try.
It's not going to be paid per hour. Mike, do you have an answer?
This is off the top of my head. I've been doing a lot with it. I'm our representative on the CPA. So I believe it's 10% of the funds can be used for administrative purposes.
Right.
So I know we're spending like $10,000 with the consultant out of Boston. So it would allow about $50,000 in there, I think.
So if you get you're 497, so 49,000 for administrative expenses. So out of that 49, literature, advertising, whatever, supplies, whatever they use. But some of that could go back for a line item through maybe just, secretarial for the assessor's office. Even if it was 5 or 10,000, it would be welcome, and then you could put it back in the general fund.
So how many hours did you add to the clerk for CPA?
She was part-time, so it was 20 hours a week. So after the CPA came through, then she went to 35.
So you added
15 hours.
15 hours a week.
Right.
And what other department does she work in if she's a floating clerk?
I know she's worked in purchasing at some times, just helping with recs when...
if they're busier?
Yeah, when they're busier. That is the only other, department she's worked.
Thanks.
But purchasing, there was a time when they were down. I think Brenda was out for a couple months. So, or no, it was when Anna was out. She was stuck in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So she helped with the recs down there.
Thanks.
Anyone else? No. Thank you very much.
I just want to hear from Councilor Sullivan about why you're spending $10,000 on someone from Boston. Can't find someone locally?
Yeah, the only 2 bids on it were from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and then the outfit out of Boston. And the outfit out of Boston had done quite a few for other communities. And the presentation that came from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission wasn't very good.
Is that a temporary thing?
Yeah, it's a 1-year thing. It's helping getting the program up and running.
Yeah, I think it was just a 1 year. Yeah.
The person that's come up has done an excellent job. I believe one of the ones they modeled a lot of it after was the town of Medford, but it's been very, very, very helpful.
I hope you're not paying mileage.
With a flat fee, so.
All right. Thank you, Tony.
All right. And like I said, when I get some figures, you guys will be the first ones to know. Okay, for values.
I just wanted to make sure because I remember you pointed that out when the whole debate was going. So we knew the clerk was going to go from part-time to full, but that was going to be helped.
It is.
So it should be.
It has added hours in time in the office. It was a little scary at first, but kind of like streamlined that process also, more like the elderly exemptions that we get. So it's more like just proper paperwork. It's a lot more paperwork than the elderly exemptions, though. It's like the whole household.
And how's that going for the elderly in a sense of good notice going out? Are they?
Yes. I'll tell you one thing right now. The elderly exemptions were up this year. The CPA exemptions, not so much. We didn't have a lot of them that applied because once they found out how much they were going to have to save on their tax bill, they didn't even apply. So it was just more of like a financial and hourly thing for them. as to, just applying. They didn't want to go through all the paperwork, and the paperwork we have is like that for each file. So it's a lot, and it's all household, so it's not just, if you have your sister living with you, she's part of the household. She has to file also income.
Yeah,
so
that was part of the false sales of the CPA. All the elders thought they were going to be exempt.
Yeah, I know. But we're working on it. We've gotten, we did do a lot. I sent a lot of stuff up to Council on Aging too, packets for CPA. So they're well aware of the CPA exemptions and in the Council on Aging also.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. Thanks. Last two is law and personnel. They're number 8 and 9. Want to take them up together, or do you still want to go one by one?
I think it must be the new kids on the block, and the only good news about being
Council on
last is there's only a few of us
What
left.
happened to the Council on Aging?
I don't know. I didn't get a notice, so
Well, then
they could have
we
been.
cut something. Oh well.
We're trying.
They had an option.
If you guys don't mind, we figure to do this one by. So welcome. We'll turn it over to you two, or who would like to start first? Toss a coin, or rock, paper, scissors.
I'll defer to Hector. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I am still becoming familiar with the budget process here, especially determining where the money is being well spent and where it isn't. So bear with me. I guess I'll start by asking, is there anything here that you guys question or have concerns about? Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Councilman.
I just had a question, and I don't even know if you've got your arms around it enough. It was just around the temporary seasonal help and how that might fit into your department and what your needs would be, because the use looks like it's been a lot lower. Mm-hmm. So I was just curious, because we're looking for everything that is the least hurtful to cut.
Correct. Oh. Well, that was actually something that I did want to discuss. On that line specifically, I would appreciate having that $5,000 remaining, simply because although I think what it's been used for, to your point that there hasn't been as much, there's 2 reports that are mandated for the government that we have someone that comes in and she takes care of that for us. And I believe has been doing a fairly good job at that. The remaining balance I would like to use to implement additional help if possible, even if it's from this individual herself. I'm not sure if actually you guys are aware, there's just myself and a personnel assistant in the department, and the traffic in that department is fairly heavy, as well as the workload. So any additional help that we can receive, it appears to come out of that line, considering the mayor took the stance to remove the previous acting director's proposal of another clerk.
So are the personnel files in proper order now that the medical is separated out from the administrative section of the files?
Correct.
Good.
But that's one of many concerns in terms of compliance and liability.
That was a huge one, and that was a mess as recently as 2 years ago.
Yeah, so. I noticed. And a couple of my other concerns, for budgetary purposes, I understand where the need to cut that clerk out of the department is necessary. But just from my 6 weeks here, I don't feel that the personnel department or the city would be in good standing moving forward into the future if this continues to be the same pattern. There's a lot of things that I've observed from a compliance and a liability standpoint where the work that is necessary to be done can't be done by just myself or my assistant, who probably is not very well trained or familiar with that piece of personnel or HR. I know organizations hire external help, HR business partners or consultants, but for me, I would think that that would probably be a waste. I'm aware that there has been an HR audit conducted several years ago from UMass. I haven't had an opportunity to fully dig into it, but I am sure that they probably have pointed out a lot of the things that I've seen in just 6 weeks. So I fully respect and support the decision to not have a clerk at this time, but I did want to use this opportunity to let you guys know I would, it would be very unfortunate to be sitting here a year from now discussing fines, fees, and liabilities for the city, which we also cannot afford. That would probably exceed a $38,000 salary.
Could I just jump in to touch on this topic of the clerk? Hector and I have been talking, and the mayor has recognized the need to have personnel and law department work side by side. So many of the issues that we deal with, particularly on the labor side, are really tied in. And Hector has just done an incredible job in the short time that he's been here to really to target some of the critical weaknesses that we've had with that respect. We have talked about the possibility of organizing the department's physical space so that the law department and personnel department are working in the same office suite. We've had some what's the word, obstacles because of the building condition. As some of the councilors might be aware, there was a water pipe burst earlier in the winter, and that's still an issue that we're working with our insurer to get that property, that portion of our office back into move-in ready condition. But I mention this because our principal clerk is paid at PR3 at the Supermax, which is $31,000, which is a salary that we're not able to, we wouldn't be able to attract the sort of professional staff that we would need if we were looking for, one of the advantages of having that joint space would be, to share administrative staff. So it is something that, I would support having the personnel department have those funds available because, if we moved in that direction, that's something that we would need funding to attract quality staff for.
But this is also part of the reason why we implemented and supported the floating clerk concept. So,
I personally, again, being new, I'm not fully well-versed with that concept. I have heard it. I think that there are implications in terms of things lying with the union and confidentiality and such. So
that is true. That is true. But if you were sharing between personnel and legal, which some are shared, like we've heard in earlier budget hearings, procurement and assessors. And then the other one, I forgot, but between two other different offices where it was compatible and the same, perhaps, level of confidential work. There could be that worked out, potentially. Because it looks like you were looking for a PR 14, and you said yours is a PR 3?
Correct.
So I'm thinking we'll be hearing about this later in the year.
Hector, welcome. And just, I don't want to throw any, well, not throw any hard balls, but I want to throw a couple curve balls just to get on for the first year, get us on the same page.
Sure.
And I believe me, I think we have a lot of departments that are understaffed, underfunded, definitely, and that the hardships are there for many departments. But there is no doubt in my mind personnel is the most understaffed, underfunded department of importance in this city. Can you just walk us through, and I don't even know if you've hit the cycle yet because I don't know when the cycle is, but the impact of employee insurance issues on your office?
Would you, and like health benefits and such?
Yes.
So my assistant currently oversees the majority of that. Unfortunately, I'm thankful that she is still around. I came in right around the open enrollment period and that process, and it is a heavy weight. and it was one person who was handling that. And it was unfortunate. So me coming in, not only were we didn't have time to stop, so I was picking it up and taking it as I could to support her. So that's why I think that not only just that, but there are a lot of other tasks that we need the support that we don't have it. Responding to personal conflicts, as Paul had mentioned, we've been spending a lot of time together. If I'm out of that office, she's running it by herself, which makes it a one-person office, and it's been happening quite often. I think that there was a heavy weight for many of department heads and city staff waiting for someone to come in to address a lot of their concerns. And fortunately or unfortunately, it's taking me out of my office space. So again, to your point, personnel is a one-person office, oftentimes, and it's not fair to the city employees, nor is it fair to my current assistant. So again, I fully respect the cut there. If in the future you guys would be open to a part-time work, $20-something thousand a year, like that would even be better than nothing at this point. But I want to make you guys aware that it is extremely important to have another body in that office.
And we're glad you're sharing that with us. I only recent years learned of the impact of the open enrollment. I said cycle, but I meant open enrollment on the office. It's incredible.
Yeah, and to answer your, sorry to interrupt you, to answer your question directly about the health insurance, again, my assistant takes care of that process. I think, and prior to me coming, I believe Rory was helping heavily, but again, he has his position and many tasks to handle. So it is a personnel function. I fully believe that it should be our responsibility, but the hands are not there. There's a lot of administrative work. The phone is ringing. There's questions. We have retirees. We have, although we don't oversee the other departments such as police and fire, they fall under our health insurance, umbrella. We are the people that they come to with questions. So the traffic is heavy.
Hector, the only other question I have or area is unemployment compensation. I'm sure you're aware that we're self-insured.
Yep.
The biggest impact traditionally is the schools, and up until this year, it was under your umbrella, your office's umbrella, and even the schools that caused some stress and tension in terms of handling it because of the way they deal with it. And I think we've sent the message to the schools, but even more so. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself. We fought that battle and done some good things with unemployment, but the schools have requested that their budget takes over their unemployment. Are you aware of that?
I am not.
Okay, I don't know what you got for a budget there. In the current budget, there's $50,000 of what last year, or I'm sorry, this current year with the schools in the line item was $450,000, which I believe the last I heard, Todd, I think last night, Dr. Zeig told us, or Anthony told us, that they pretty much expended the money. Not getting into the schools, and maybe I can't ask this question because you're not aware of it, but I just wanted to question if that $50,000, it was probably in this budget before you took over, if you have a handle on if that's what your needs are this year, or...
So I'm still unaware of how heavily... how heavy of an impact this is. I would assume that it's a heavy impact because it is for everyone, no matter what organization you're part of. I'm not sure if $50,000 would be enough. Based on my interactions with my assistant, she does have a concern for this process of unemployment. To rectify it, or to moving forward, I did meet with our reps, I guess we would call them, from UTCA, to kind of get an understanding of what their role is with helping the city. We do pay them for their services to kind of control the response to the unemployment claims and overseeing that process. But they're concerned for us. based off our trends. And they agree that there's a lot of opportunity. Part of our contract with them is an annual training that, from my understanding, hasn't been utilized in years. So it's unfortunate, and I've been noticing this it's been a goal of mine to meet with anyone that I should be interacting with, so UTCA, the head of the Employee Assistance Program, and really understanding what is in our contracts. And I've been noticing that trainings are not being utilized, and it's part of that fee that we're paying.
We're paying for it, right?
Yes. So
that'll be a good thing to
yeah. So something that I discussed with the folks from unemployment is conducting trainings for department heads so that they are aware of the impact. I don't think department heads are aware of how much of an impact unemployment affects not just the city, but their department at the end of the day. Because the funds, it's for all of us, right? So it's important for me to make sure that these trainings get conducted at some point. It's been very hectic right now. But they've agreed to come in based off the contract that we have with them to conduct these trainings, to educate department heads. Tomorrow, actually, speaking of school department, I have a meeting with Anthony to kind of brief me on his role and what he's experienced in regards to unemployment. And I think he initially, and I'm not too familiar with him, but from my conversation with the folks from UTCA, they met with him when he came on board. And he too agreed that there was a large concern to address this. So I'm hoping that maybe a year from now we will see improvement in these in these dollars. Moving forward, if we can just educate and train everyone. So that's again another big part of my budget line is the training, and I think we need to.
I think invest. That's very important. And I was going to suggest that you meet with Anthony. Anthony's we found him, I'll speak for myself, but I think the City Council agrees, as being a good transparent business manager, financial manager for the schools. And I know over the last 2 years, not that I'm in favor of receivership, but his presence has helped us learn a lot about the budget process. I won't get into all historically, the unemployment issues have been the schools.
Yeah.
And even before receivership, there was a problem where, because teachers only work 10 months of the year, but their budget cycle can be different. And they have a certification process when they're hired. If they don't have their certification, they have up to 3 years to get it. And then if they don't get it, they have to be laid off. They cannot be rehired by a state mandate. We found teachers, that type of person was collecting money, and we said, well, can't that be challenged, because they knew they had to get their certification.
Correct.
And the message there is you're not going to see a lot of unemployment, I hope, on the city side of the budget, but when you do see it, don't be afraid to challenge it. And
yeah, so I agree, and that to the point of it wasn't being challenged. I think that if there's room to challenge it, it should be. Because the liability is large. And in my previous employment, I'm very experienced with that, so it's not something I'm afraid to do.
And not to scare anyone or to talk about it, because it doesn't appear it's going to happen this year. But at some point, and the schools are looking at it, they tell us maybe 2020, we could be facing massive layoffs. And I'll give you an example of a formula that an old auditor, a friend of mine, tells me that he still uses, Bellamy, is if you have to lay a body off, to save money in a budget, because we're unemployed, we're uninsured, we're self-insured for unemployment. Everyone you lay off, you lay another body and a half off to pay the unemployment insurance. And that's not a yellow flag, that's an immediate red flag if we start talking about major layoffs. And I'll end it there, because that's hopefully not this year and hopefully never again, but it's happened before.
Thank you. So I was interested to understand, and I hear you on the unemployment as that being one area of liability that you're concerned about.
Correct.
At an early look. Could you let us know the top 3 areas that you have concerns about relative to what you alluded to with legal fines or of some sort?
So I-9 compliance prior to...
In terms of the files?
The files, the way that they're filed, the completion of the I-9 itself. I actually, before coming here, just finished a self I-9 audit and actually led that with my previous employer. And it is a very extensive and exhausting process, but it is also a process that needs to be completed, because if not, the organization is going to face fines. I believe the one I-9 itself can face anywhere from $100 to $1,100 or $1,200.
So are you saying they have, that in your review they have not been filed, or they've been filed late, or they're needing to be filed?
All of the above.
Okay.
When I tell
so
you,
that's a main area of concentration.
It's probably my number one concern right now, because it's such an easy target for us to be liable for. If we're talking $100 for just one I-9, and we are, we have, and sometimes it's just one thing. It could be missing the date, and we're fined. It could be missing the employee's middle initial, and we're fined.
So is this something this temporary person could help with? Project like that, or no?
It would be my hope that they can, but it is also, I believe the regulations for conducting a self I-9 audit would be the responsibility of the employer, and I don't know if a temporary or a seasonal employee falls under that title.
You'd have to be the
correct.
authority.
I would be able to oversee and also assist, but there are areas where signatures are required, and
that would not be the seasonal person. But I just wondered, it sounded like you said she had a pretty good skill level. So I just was wondering if we left the money in there, if that would help get you over, these project hurdles.
It would assist for sure. Yeah.
And the other two?
Something as simple as, actually, when I came in for my interview, I walked the halls of City Hall, and I noticed federal and our wage posters are not in compliance. It says minimum wage is $8. Minimum wage is actually $11, and that was in several years ago. So that was just one observation that I made my very first day.
So that's a quick fix.
Yeah, very quick fix. I actually already put in an order for that in the annex building, but I guess there are some regulations that are changing in the state of Massachusetts. So the vendor has been told to seize all orders until right. Gotcha. But again, as a city, if this is happening here, is it happening in every other office area that these regulations should be in place? And I want for us to save everywhere we can, but there needs to be a control, and I'm afraid that those controls are not there.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to add in, Hector alluded to the Collins report, and that's something that has sort of provided the framework for what we're looking to do. And a lot of these issues have been identified, and bringing the city into compliance is something that we have a framework to work this through. Some of these issues have been identified, and it's just been encouraging to see Hector go and take action.
Yes, because we talked about these things 5 years ago.
Thanks. Hector, if the some of these outside contractors or vendors are supposed to be, the contracts call for them to be doing training, why do we, and we haven't been taking advantage of it, now we're going to, why do we have $10,000 in for employee training programs?
So the contracts that I speak of only pertain to a limited amount of training. So with unemployment or through UTCA, they would provide a training specifically for unemployment purposes. Yep. But there's sexual harassment trainings that should be conducted. There's OSHA classes as that we probably should invest in moving forward, considering that's probably going to be implemented at some point this year or the following year. Professional development, leadership trainings that I believe a lot of our department heads would benefit from. So there's a large number of different trainings. The I-9 itself, if department heads, so park and recs, police, fire, DPW, if they are going to be responsible for you know, let's just use the example I-9 process, they need to be trained because they are contributing to the liability. So we would have to hire someone who can conduct a formal training to get everyone on the same page, because I know what I'm doing, but I am not, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm certified to conduct a training class for everyone. So that's where that line and those funds should be used for.
Okay.
When he's done.
So, and I can see in 2017 we didn't spend anything. In 2018 we've only spent $5,000. Is this something even, you know, with your knowledge of the I-9 training, that you could begin the process anyways with the department heads? As far as leadership training goes, you know, there's a lot of packages out there, and I've been through some myself, and I've kind of got mixed feelings on that. If we've got a department head now that needs leadership training, sexual harassment, is that something you could do in-house with the department heads and have them conduct, you know, training in their departments? Do we really need, is that something where we could reduce at least to level funding with, you know, what was actually spent last year was 5,000, even though we budgeted 10?
So I agree with you. I think that there are certain trainings that I would be able to implement and conduct myself. Unfortunately, there's no time, nor am I available to do that with having just one person in the office. So if there were 2 people to hold down the personnel department and allow myself to focus on some of these trainings, conducting them, piecing them together, partnering with the solicitors to make sure that it's legally compliant, then yeah, we would be able to do that. But at this time, with just 2 people, it's impossible.
Making a hell of a plug for that third person. Yeah. All right, so just getting it rolling and bringing things up to speed for the first year, or as we ease into this thing, can we get by on 5,000?
It would be my guess, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to state, in terms of training, you know, to your point of trying to bring down the professional service employee training line, we may be able to bring that down in the future, but at this point, the training is necessary. And if we can invest now, we would save later.
Well, I believe, you know, training should be an ongoing thing. And you know, if 5,000 a year was something we could budget, and that's what we spent in previous years, right now 10,000 to get going. If we could
I agree,
5,000 off of what we're facing this year.
I guess it's questionable whether or not that money was well spent. And as I said, I don't think the controls were in place, and I don't think I don't want to question anyone else's leadership, but I think where we are right now speaks for itself in terms of what's happening.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Like your proposal to add 10?
No.
I will say, in terms of saving,
A dime from this budget is suicide.
well, I will say there are 2 lines that I see where we can possibly save, and if you guys agree, then I'm on board if we must. Dues and subscription, I don't see my department hurting if we slash that 500 to 250. And then advertising, I see that increased. I do think that there's a need for the increase, but again, it goes back to whether or not the money was being well spent. I don't think, and in the 6 weeks I've been here, I've noticed multiple times people resorting to, can we get this job posting in the newspaper? It's very expensive, and
doesn't work.
I think studies would probably show not many people read the newspaper as they once did. You know, so for me to utilize other services such as Indeed or LinkedIn or CareerPoint or the unemployment office or posting a job posting at a community center, those are all free avenues. Indeed still costs money, but on my end it would be a little bit more work of a repetition of posting certain jobs on a regular basis to avoid the costs, because really what you pay for on Indeed with a couple of additional things, you're really paying for to post your position, you're posting one time, and for it to be fresh anytime someone clicks, you know, Indeed.com, your posting will be right there. And that's where the cost is really going. As opposed to me going in there every several days and re-uploading that posting. So it's labor on my part, but it saves us money. So I would be willing to bring the 10,000 down to 8,500 if you guys feel comfortable with that, as well as my dues and subscriptions to 250. But I mean, if I can use that money that I'm giving up elsewhere, I would. But to help save, that's what I'd be willing to give.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, but you'd also will be willing to go down to 5,000 on the training?
No. Okay. I will. You guys. I mean, I'm not sure how this works in the past, but you guys have my word that I too like to save money, and I would be proud of it to sit here a year from now and you guys be happy that we did. Unfortunately, if the money has to be spent, then it has to be spent. But I would like the money to be there as you know, a resource so that we're successful.
Linda, you had a follow-up?
Thank you. I just had a follow-up on the insurance. I heard you on saying one person was really having the weight of the open enrollment, but did the company, usually the company will send representatives to help with open enrollment. Did they not do that?
Yes, so we have open enrollment sessions.
Okay, so they did at least do that.
Yeah,
okay.
They did. Blue Cross Blue Shield sent the rep, Cigna sent the rep, but there's only 3 out of the whole open enrollment period, and it's during the summertime.
I'm not diminishing the busyness.
Yeah,
I just wanted to be sure that they were doing that.
Yes, we're paying for their services. They are. Yes.
Okay, and then I just wanted you to know that we can be sympathetic to the needs that you're sharing with us, but as the city council, we have only the ability to cut this budget. We have no ability to add anything to it.
I understand that.
Okay.
Yes, I was just, I knew that this is where we were today, and I just wanted to express my concern moving forward. So if there is an opportunity to somehow implement a third person, whether that be at the next fiscal year meeting, I would like you guys to remember this conversation.
Yeah, and just so you know, when we get done with the cuts that we make, which will not be enough to balance the budget, history being the informative background, it will be months before we know the free cash to actually move to the next section of the budget, which will probably be in the later fall, just as a timeline.
Yeah.
Bellamy is going to do it super fast. You cut it down this time. You made the promise.
Well, I didn't see it in blood, so, you know, we'll see when we see the money.
It's the next ordinance change.
But I just want to make one final comment. I just find your approach and your comments that you've made totally refreshing. I think I'm seeing in your comments the background that I read in your resume.
Yes.
And so while I'm definitely a fiscal conservative, I do believe in people having the tools they need to get the job done. And I have to say, granted this is a brief meeting, but I feel much more confident that the resources would be well used now than I have in the past.
Thank you. And I would like to welcome you guys. I would reach out individually so that you guys can see, or we can have, you know, further the discussion of, you know, the personnel department and its impact on the city.
Thank you.
And we'd like to welcome you to next Tuesday to stay tuned for all the motions to cut your budget.
There's a 5,000.
It's a necessary reality, Joe.
Could I make a plug on that comment about you know, I would really support keeping those funds in there. I think the $5,000 that you would cut from professional development, employee training, you know, speaking from my own experience as a, you know, 1 year in as a department head, and there's been a few in this fiscal year, a few new department heads, you know, good professional development and availability of training, I think cuts down on costs in the long run, because we're not making the mistakes, and we're identifying the efficiencies that ultimately make government run better. And certainly in the personnel context, there's a few filing cabinets that tell the story of the money we can save and the sort of employment culture that we can improve by pursuing those. So I'd make a plug in support of that, and that's an interesting way, I guess, to begin the pitch on my budget, because I
was about to say I agree with you 100% now. On page 8, find us $5,000.
There you go.
Well, I would want to begin by looking at what the department's personnel expenses have been, both in terms of the in-house composition of the department, as well as our outside counsel. And I know outside counsel is a concept that's fresh in the minds of the counselors. But as this chart shows, we really have made an effort in the department over the last 4 or 5 years, has really made an effort to limit these costs, take on employment and labor matters in-house, particularly paying outside counsel for civil service and MCAT administrative hearings. It was just not a wise fiscal expense. At the same time, I would really like to see an outside counsel relationship in the future where we can have somebody on retainer for specific discrete legal questions on those matters, rather than sending them outside counsel. But understandably, funds are limited. Just to give you a sense of what that what that evolution in the department has looked like in this past fiscal year, there's been one new fee-generating matter that's been sent to our outside counsel. That's a federal civil rights case. There's been one contingency fee matter. That's the recent opioid litigation that has no cost exposure to the city. That's it for outside counsel in this past fiscal year. 2 cases that have gone out of the department. We've kept 4 civil litigation matters in-house. A matter that was filed against the police department for release of drug testing information for an individual that we feel is a very defensible case, and I'm not saying anything that can't be said in public session. We've filed a motion to dismiss on that, and the hearing will be set for later in July. We actually received a favorable dismissal on a case that was filed by the tenant of One Cabot that was looking to hold up the sale process for that, and the court dismissed that matter. We have 2 other pending civil matters, the plush litigation involving Holyoke Public School language access, and MD Church, which the council is aware of. And both of those matters have a pathway to resolution at hand. We also had 2 civil service matters that are currently have been heard, with proposed decisions submitted to civil service, and we are expecting to hear back from them in the fall. And we've had 3 MCAT matters, including the Lori Belanger matter, which we received a favorable dismissal on. So all those matters have been handled in-house, and I think at a great savings to the department. And also, that activity is, I think, crucial for the department to, we do have 2 attorneys that have been with the department for a year now, and having this activity, I think, has helped the department really, grow and build the skill set that hopefully will be the foundation for many years to come. So with that, I have proposed a 1.5% raise. Where, as you know, the law department is non-union, so that 1.5% raise has been proposed to each of across the board. Unfortunately, with the exception of our principal clerk, who is in great need of recognition in the salary study, which I've requested but understand is not reflected in the budget. And with respect to outside counsel, the request for $150,000 was submitted in the mayor's budget at 75, with the expectation of following a similar course as was followed at last year's budget hearing, where you basically say, let's come back in December, see where we are. And I think that's reasonable. Hopefully this December, things will play out a little bit differently, where that will be available for free cash. So that takes care of, the big part of our expenses. I really, would like to see, as a staffing chart shows here, the department return to a 6 staff member setup. But again, I understand that the fiscal constraints of this budget year, require us to sort of make do with what we have. Before moving into individual expenses, I don't know if you wanted to sort of open up to questions on outside counsel and in-house staffing.
Councilor Bacon?
Thanks. Because I don't know all the details of all the departments, my perception is that all of your positions are filled at this time.
Yes, correct.
For the 5.
Correct.
I mean, you wanted 6, but you are filled with the 5 right now.
Yes, recently Attorney Amber Gould took a position with the Springfield Law Department in March. I'll use the line that's often said for more pay, but we're grateful that she stayed local and is active with the bench bar committee and still works closely with Kara and Crystal. But we were sad to see her go, but we were able to fill the position just recently with attorney Tasha Marshall, who just started this week, and she's been a great asset just in the few days that she's been here.
And in terms of the numbers on the salary line, would the scale have to be raised in order to pay what's on the page in front of us, or are those numbers in front of us within the current scale?
They're within the DH classification, correct?
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Mike?
Yeah. On that outside counsel, how much of that was with Seidel and Seidel, roughly?
That Seidel and Seidel is a separate line item that would be in the treasurer's budget. It's not reflected in those outside counsel figures.
Okay, so none of the 134,000 expended so far this year was with Seidel.
Correct.
Okay. And right now, what you said with all the everything the way it's going right now, even though we slashed it last year by 75,000, there's not a lot in the pipeline, and for budgetary purposes, it sounds like we could slash it even further.
I think right now we have 3 federal civil rights cases that are right in the 2 of them right in the heart of discovery. One of them that's beginning discovery. That I think there's no question that $75,000 would be consumed by that. And as I stated before, I've talked with other attorneys on this, and I wouldn't recommend changing counsel on a matter that's with pending litigation. There are the 2 worker compensation cases. One of them has settled and is just pending administrative approval with the state. And then the Wilcox matter is actually scheduled for a pre-trial mediation this Friday and trial later, pre-trial mediation next Friday, and then trial later in July. So I'm sure everybody is really hoping to see an end to those. As the council's review, that's been a big chunk of our outside counsel expenses, and that would really free up
room in the budget, Councilor Sullivan, for what I think would really be beneficial for the law department, which is a very modest retainer for a good employment law firm that I can pick the phone up and say, hey, we have this situation here. What's the best precedent for this? Obviously we're doing the research in house, but if we had that extra degree of professional development for the attorneys in the office, I think that would be money well spent and not the sort of outside counsel relationship that you're just down the rabbit hole with billable hours.
So you're talking about help like in negotiating union contracts?
That's something that we've done in the past, and again, I think that's looking at the files. Attorney Carroll would do all of the work on the front end, send it out to outside counsel, and then they're not familiar with the city, they're not familiar with these issues, so they're billing us hours to figure out what's going on. I think when if there were savings in the outside counsel budget, if we were able to free up our litigation and there was some money to look into other relationships, I'd like to have counsel on retainer for more sort of like a research and advising counsel on litigation that's being handled in-house.
Okay. Is the NASD matter with outside counsel?
It is.
Who's that?
And that's Attorney Chuck Emma. It's a contingency fee basis.
Okay, so that's really not costing us anything?
Correct.
Is that the new one?
It was filed in 2016.
Is that something you think we can put some pressure on them to bring to a head and get this resolved in 2019, fiscal 2019?
Yes, and I do have a litigation update that's prepared. I just if that's something that even after the the new fiscal year, if we want to sort of get an update on some of that. But I think that's fair to say that within the next year we're hoping to see if there could be a settlement or a resolution. But trial would still be about a year out if we went to trial.
Yeah, I know we can't get into too much detail, but I think we've shelled out quite a bit of money on that. It'd be nice to see some come back in.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Someone else?
I just had who did the new federal case get sent out to?
That was Chuck Emma, the police case.
Oh, okay. Is that contingency too?
No, that's a fee.
Fee. Okay. Thanks. And can I ask one more question? Can you just talk about that litigation account?
Sure.
I was just wondering, is that where you pay things out of?
That's a good question. I think there's always a lot of confusion about. So litigations really are in-house expenses. So filing fees, the major cost there is service for housing court. So all our share of service and process fees, arbitration filing fees. And I do just want to note, because there is an increase that's requested to that, a rather large one, going from $8,000 to $11,000. And the reason for that is, if you look at Munis, every single year, there's something from $1,000. So 2016, there was $1,000 transferred in. 2017, it was $1,800 transferred in. In 2018, there's been $2,450 transferred in, and as Joe mentioned, there was a request for an additional transfer that I think we're going to be able to do just interdepartmentally or within the department. But litigation is always something that's under budgeted. So if we're really looking at getting an honest, a sense of what the department's budget is, and I expect that item, if we're taking more things in house, it makes sense that those costs are going to increase.
Thank you.
Paul, do you have anything else, or?
Just along that line, the other there's two other items here that reflect an increase, and I will be fair. I know we're looking for cuts. The in-state travel is something that has been historically appropriated at $1,500, and it's requested at $2,000. We are trying to consolidate our housing court you know, into one day. Right now, it's scheduled on 2. We're doing a lot of work with that, and Crystal has just been, I don't know where she finds the hours, but it has such a large docket that it's gone on for 2 days. But I think that, you know, historically we've made do with 1,500, and we could look at, you know, transferring in. Education and training, as I mentioned, you know, this is my first year. This was my first year as a, you know, the solicitor in the department, and we have Crystal and Chris, who have been with us for a year, and now Attorney Marshall, who just joined us. Chris has actually added training in Framingham tonight for wireless telecommunication regulation. We recently attended a training for marijuana regulation. Chris and Crystal went out to Milwaukee for the vacant building conference. We've really tried to, I've really tried to make those training opportunities available for my staff, and I really do think it's something that $2,000 spent on, you know, training of some bright attorneys in this department. Well, you know, maybe not myself included, but certainly Chris, Crystal, and Tasha, you know, is really money that, you know, we'll see save the city money long term on outside counsel. The other item is dues and subscriptions, and it's along the same lines. I mean, some of the resource materials and handbooks that we have in the department are from the mid-2000s. And 2 years ago, we got the land use sort of handbook. It's $400 a year, but Jeff Burkott sort of, you know, wanted to buy me a birthday cake after getting that, because it's a good resource, and it's the sort of thing that, you know, makes gives the information that we need, not just within the law department, but other department heads. So I think that's also money that's well spent. And as we wrap up here, I'll volunteer a cut. As we mentioned, the vacant building revolving fund has, I think, been very successful. We are still gearing it up to be spending the money that we bring in, but the recording fee line item for $2,500 requested really wouldn't be necessary, because those recording fees are coming out of the revolving fund. But we still do some real estate transactions, so I think it would be prudent to leave about $1,000 in that line item.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This concludes the review process.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
And now it'll be what, Monday? Here,
I'll second that.
Even with a second, Peter, we have a shortfall of numbers. But it'll be Mondays DGNR, Tuesdays us, and then if need be, it would